Julian Stockholm, the greatest genius in the Magus universe, stood at the end of his journey. Surrounded by thousands of hostile Magi, he was covered in wounds so severe that blood pooled beneath his feet. His black armor was shattered, one of his arms was gone, and hundreds of corpses littered the battlefield around him. There was no escape left. Every path had been sealed, and powerful Magi surrounded him from all directions. The enemies mocked him relentlessly. They laughed at the once unrivaled genius who had shaken the universe with his talent. Yet despite their taunts, none of them dared to step forward. Fear filled their eyes. Even in such a miserable state, Julian Stockholm remained someone they could not underestimate. Then, Stockholm slowly raised his remaining arm. Instantly, the surrounding Magi became alert. A pristine white lotus appeared in his palm, and the moment they saw it, greed flashed across their faces. This legendary artifact was the very treasure everyone had been fighting over. Looking at the lotus, Stockholm smiled bitterly. He realized that the burden of this artifact had always been too great for him to bear. Perhaps it had never been his destiny to possess it. Even so, he felt no regret. Throughout his life, he had pursued the highest peak of magic with everything he had. Although death awaited him today, he remained satisfied with the path he had chosen. He believed that one day someone else would inherit his will and continue the dream he could not complete. Then his smile turned cold. Since all of his enemies had gone to such great lengths to corner him, they might as well accompany him into death. The thousands of Magi immediately felt a terrifying sense of danger. Before they could react, an overwhelming pressure descended upon the battlefield. The source of that pressure was the White Lotus. As the artifact bloomed, space across thousands of miles suddenly froze. Stockholm poured every remaining drop of mana into it, causing a massive energy vortex to form around the lotus. Cracks rapidly spread through the surrounding void as reality itself began to collapse under its divine power. Panic erupted among the Magi. They desperately tried to flee, but it was already too late. One after another, their eyes lost all light. Their souls were torn from their bodies and devoured by the White Lotus. No physical wounds appeared on them. Instead, the artifact directly destroyed and consumed their souls. Stockholm himself was also reaching his limit. His consciousness gradually faded as the lotus continued to absorb countless souls. Yet he gritted his teeth and persisted, determined to drag every one of his enemies into the grave with him. Soon, the battlefield became silent. The bodies of powerful Magi, beings capable of ruling entire planets and inspiring awe in trillions across the universe, collapsed one after another. Before the power of the White Lotus, however, they were no different from ants. At last, Stockholm could no longer endure. His own soul was annihilated and absorbed by the artifact. With that, Julian Stockholm, the greatest genius of the Magus universe, perished. After devouring thousands of powerful souls, the White Lotus floated silently above the battlefield. Majestic and untouched, it hovered in the air for a brief moment before drifting toward one of the cracks in the void. Then it disappeared. The legendary artifact continued its journey through the boundless universe, silently waiting for the person destined to inherit its power and carry on the dream left behind by Julian Stockholm. After the legendary White Lotus vanished into the boundless universe, waiting for its next inheritor, far away in another corner of the world, a young boy named Adam Constantine continued chasing his own dream. More than a month had passed since Adam left the Cormier Kingdom. Traveling with a large caravan, he had already crossed 2 kingdoms on the way to Moon City, the capital of the Nightingale Kingdom. Along the journey, the group had encountered several attacks from wild beasts, but the mercenaries escorting the caravan had always driven them away. Fortunately, they had yet to encounter more dangerous threats, such as magical beasts, ogres, or trolls that roamed the untamed wilderness. That night, while the sounds of crickets and owls echoed through the forest, Adam practiced swordsmanship alone in a clearing near the camp. His upper body was bare, drenched in sweat as he repeatedly swung a rough-edged sword. His technique was simple and unrefined, but every strike carried determination. Eventually, exhaustion forced him to stop. Lying on the grass beneath the twin moons, he stared at the night sky while thinking about the journey ahead. According to what he had overheard from the other children, reaching Moon City would still take another 2 months. Moon City was famous throughout the region because it housed Clover Academy, one of the most prestigious magic academies in the area. Every year, children from neighboring kingdoms traveled there, hoping to enroll and begin the path of becoming a Magus. Adam was no exception. Ever since he was young, he had dreamed of becoming becoming a Magus. Years ago, he had met a Magus who discovered that he possessed talent for spellcasting. Learning this had completely changed his life. In a world where strength determined everything, Magi stood above ordinary people. They were revered by the masses and possessed the power to control nature itself. Adam refused to spend his life as an ordinary person. Since discovering his talent, he had trained diligently every day, determined to one day become a Magus and travel the world. Unlike many of the noble children accompanying the caravan, however, Adam was merely a commoner. Worse, he was an orphan with nobody to rely on except himself. Growing up, he worked countless odd jobs and saved every coin he could just to afford this journey. Even then, he wasn't sure he had enough money. Thinking about the academy's enrollment fee made him sigh. Still, he reassured himself that once he reached Moon City, there would be some time before the entrance examination. He would find a way to earn the money somehow. No matter what happened, he was determined to enter Clover Academy. After gathering his belongings, Adam headed to a nearby pond to wash himself before dinner. The moonlight reflected beautifully across the water, creating a calm and peaceful atmosphere. Even so, he carefully checked his surroundings for danger before stepping into the pond. The cold water quickly soothed his sore muscles. As he bathed, the surface reflected his young appearance. Dark eyes filled with innocence and determination, black hair reaching the base of his neck, and otherwise ordinary features. Just as he was about to leave the water, something caught his attention. Floating in the center of the pond was a pristine white lotus surrounded by 3 green leaves. The flower appeared ordinary at first glance, yet it seemed to radiate a subtle divine aura. As Adam stared at it, he felt strangely refreshed and couldn't look away. Nearly a minute passed before he finally snapped out of his daze. The mysterious lotus immediately sparked a thought. Could it be one of the rare natural ingredients used in magical potions? Excitement surged through him. If that was true, selling it in Moon City could easily provide enough money to pay for the Academy's enrollment fee. Without hesitation, Adam quietly swam toward the flower, careful not to make too much noise. He didn't want anyone else discovering what could be his ticket into Clover Academy. Soon, he reached the center of the pond. The lotus was finally within arm's reach. Grinning with excitement, Adam carefully extended his hand and touched the white petals. The instant his fingers made contact, the lotus vanished. At the same moment, Adam's expression froze. His eyes rolled back, and he immediately lost consciousness. The moment Adam touched the white lotus, everything around him vanished. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing on a vast green plain. Confused and alarmed, he tried to understand what had happened. Just moments ago, he had been bathing in the pond, yet now he had somehow appeared in a completely different place. Before he could make sense of it, the scenery shifted. A man clad in black armor appeared before him. The stranger had long black hair and carried himself with calm confidence. Adam instinctively stepped back and tried to speak to him, but the man showed no reaction at all, as if he couldn't see or hear him. Then thousands of people suddenly appeared around them. Some floated in the sky, while others stood on the ground. Their presence alone made it difficult for Adam to breathe. Almost immediately, he realized what they were. Magi. The armored man remained calm despite being surrounded. His posture never wavered, and fear was nowhere to be seen on his face. Although Adam couldn't understand the strange language spoken by the surrounding Magi, it was obvious they had hostile intentions. What happened next completely shattered everything Adam thought he knew about power. Thousands of Magi attacked at the same time. Countless spells erupted across the battlefield, filling the sky with devastating colors and unimaginable destruction. The earth cracked apart. The heavens seemed to split open, and the battle resembled the end of the world itself. Adam watched in stunned disbelief. Despite facing thousands of powerful opponents, the armored Magus fought back alone and even gained the upper hand. With a simple wave of his hand, he froze space itself. With another, countless enemies were reduced to nothingness. Yet his opponents were equally terrifying. They summoned meteor showers, earthquakes, thunderstorms, and massive tsunamis with their magic. As the battle dragged on, numbers eventually began to overwhelm even the armored Magus. He suffered one injury after another. At one point, a female Magus rushed toward him him at incredible speed and severed his arm, though she paid for it with her life. Without realizing it, Adam had begun rooting for the lone warrior. He watched helplessly as the armored Magus continued fighting despite his worsening condition. Then, during his final moments, the man summoned something that made Adam's heart stop. A pristine white lotus. It was the same lotus Adam had discovered in the pond. Before Adam could process what he was seeing, space froze, and the surrounding Magi desperately tried to escape. The lotus bloomed, creating a terrifying vortex that consumed everything. One by one, the Magi died, while the armored Magus slowly reached the end of his life. As Adam watched, he felt as though the dying Magus briefly looked directly at him. Even at death's door, there was no fear or regret in the man's eyes. The Magus died, standing tall. Adam's eyes became moist as he witnessed the final moments of the warrior, who had faced thousands of enemies alone. Soon afterward, the scene vanished, and Adam found himself floating inside a mysterious white space filled with glowing orbs of different sizes. He struggled to comprehend everything he had just witnessed, especially the connection between the armored Magus and the white lotus. His attention shifted to a nearby orb of light, and he cautiously reached toward it. But before he could touch it, everything changed once again. Adam suddenly found himself back in the pond. The first thing he noticed was that the white lotus had disappeared. Panic immediately gripped him. After witnessing the vision, he understood that the flower was no ordinary magical ingredient. It was an incredible artifact connected to the powerful Magus he had just seen. Frantically, he searched the pond, but the lotus was nowhere to be found. Then he noticed something strange in his reflection. Inside his dark eyes were intricate flower-shaped patterns, glowing with divine white light. A shocking possibility appeared in his mind. The lotus had fused with him. The thought filled him with excitement. Although he had no idea what the artifact truly was or what abilities it possessed, he knew it was something extraordinary that could help him achieve his dream of becoming a Magus. Gradually, the glowing patterns faded until his eyes looked normal again. After calming down, Adam left the pond, changed into fresh clothes, and headed toward the campfire where dinner was being served. Thoughts of the future filled his mind as he imagined what this mysterious inheritance might mean for him. But before he could enjoy the moment, a mocking voice suddenly interrupted his thoughts. "If it isn't the farm boy." The familiar insult instantly made Adam clench his fists. Looking toward the speaker, he felt annoyance rise within him. This bastard again. The voice belonged to Jeffrey Palmer, the arrogant son of a duke from the Cormier kingdom. Dressed in expensive silk clothes and decorated with fancy ornaments, Jeffrey approached Adam with two followers trailing behind him. The trio had spent the entire journey mocking Adam. As the only commoner among the children traveling to Clover Academy, he was an easy target. In their eyes, someone of his status had no right to dream of becoming a Magus. Adam had always tolerated their insults. He knew that unlike them, he had no noble family backing him. Everything he had achieved came from his own hard work and the chance encounter with the wandering Magus who had discovered his talent and taught him to read and write. But tonight felt different. After witnessing the vision of the black armored Magus standing against thousands of enemies without fear, something had changed inside him. When Jeffrey approached, expecting the usual silent submission, Adam calmly met his gaze and asked what he wanted. The response caught Jeffrey completely off guard. His two lackeys immediately stepped forward, furious that a commoner had dared speak back. Adam ignored them and looked directly at Jeffrey. "If there's nothing, then get lost. Don't bother me from now on." Jeffrey's expression darkened instantly. He couldn't understand where this newfound confidence had come from. Enraged, he ordered his followers to teach Adam a lesson. One of the boys charged forward and threw a punch. Adam reacted immediately. Thanks to his daily training, he sidestepped the attack and countered with a punch of his own. The strike landed squarely on the boy's nose. The lackey collapsed to the ground, screaming in pain, claiming his nose was broken. Before he could continue, Adam kicked him in the face and knocked him unconscious. The second lackey froze. The sight of his companion being defeated so easily completely shattered his courage. Adam sneered and beckoned him forward. Instead of fighting, the terrified boy turned around and ran straight back toward camp. Jeffrey shouted after him, but the boy only ran faster. Now furious, Jeffrey watched as Adam crouched beside the unconscious lackey and picked up his money pouch. When Adam opened it, he was shocked by the amount of gold inside. There was more money in that pouch than he had managed to save during all his years of work back home. Jeffrey immediately accused him of stealing. Adam simply looked at him and demanded that he hand over his own money as well. well. The noble boy was completely stunned. A commoner was actually trying to extort him. Consumed by anger, Jeffrey rushed forward to fight personally. The result was immediate. Adam knocked him unconscious with a single punch to the jaw. Then he took Jeffrey's money pouch as well. It was made from fine silk and felt even heavier than the first one. Satisfied, Adam decided to consider the money compensation for all the bullying he had endured during the journey. Laughing to himself, he headed back toward the campfire. The financial problems that had worried him for so long suddenly seemed solved. Adam wasn't concerned about retaliation. They were far from the Cormier kingdom, and the mercenaries escorting the caravan had no interest in getting involved in a fight between children. After joining the line for food, he received a simple meal of black bread and meat stew and sat down away from the others. While eating, his thoughts drifted back to the White Lotus, the mysterious space filled with glowing orbs, and the vision of the black-armored Magus. He couldn't stop wondering what the Lotus truly was, or how he could return to that strange realm. After finishing dinner, he lay down on the grass beneath the stars. The image of the lone Magus battling thousands of enemies replayed repeatedly in his mind. Adam stared at the night sky with longing. One day, he wanted to become someone like that. Eventually, sleep overtook him. Meanwhile, inside one of the nearby carriages, a man wearing an olive cloak sat reading a thick book. At some point, he looked out the window and noticed Adam sleeping with two bulging money pouches clutched tightly against his body. The man's gaze then shifted toward the clearing, where Jeffrey and one of his followers still lay unconscious. After briefly examining their injuries, he simply shook his head with amusement and returned to his book. As for Adam, he continued sleeping peacefully, dreaming of the day he would become a splendid Magus. As Adam continued dreaming of becoming a Magus, another month passed during the caravan's journey to Moon City. The monsoon season had arrived, bringing heavy rainfall and difficult roads. Fortunately, the scaled horses pulling the carriages were sturdy enough to handle the rough conditions, allowing the party to continue moving without major delays. During this period, they were attacked by magical beasts several times. However, the more than 30 mercenaries escorting the caravan easily dealt with these threats. Although they couldn't wield mana, they were experienced fighters capable of handling ordinary magical beasts. Everyone knew that the real danger still lay ahead. The closer they got to the Nightingale Kingdom, the more numerous and powerful the magical beasts would become. At that point, the mercenaries alone would not be enough. Fortunately, 3 Rank 1 Magi, assigned by Clover Academy, were also traveling with the caravan. Their duty was to ensure the children's safe arrival in Moon City. So far, they had not needed to intervene, but many of the children eagerly anticipated seeing real Magi in action. Throughout the month, Adam remained focused on his training. Every day he exercised and practiced his combat skills without fail. Jeffrey Palmer had not forgotten his humiliation. Several times, he gathered other children and attempted to trouble Adam, but every confrontation ended the same way. Adam beat them soundly and somehow walked away richer than before. Eventually, the other children learned their lesson and stopped provoking him. Even so, none of them wanted to befriend him. The difference in social status remained a barrier. Adam was still the lone commoner among a group of noble children. Although this isolation hurt him somewhat, it wasn't anything new. He had spent most of his life alone. Instead of dwelling on it, he focused on the things that mattered most to him, growing stronger and becoming a Magus. While the children kept their distance, the mercenaries treated him differently. They knew Adam possessed magical talent and might one day become a spellcaster. Building a good relationship with a future Magus could only benefit them. One evening, Adam sat around a smaller campfire, sharing dinner with several mercenaries. Curious about his future destination, he asked a middle-aged mercenary named Rick about Moon City. Rick proudly declared it the finest city he had ever visited, despite traveling throughout much of the Southern Federation. He explained that the River Orie divided the city into 2 sections, the North Ward and the South Ward. The North Ward housed most of the nobles and the royal palace, while Clover Academy was located in the South Ward. Another mercenary, Lila, reminded Rick not to forget the city's most famous landmark, the Lunar Bridge. According to her, the bridge crossed the River Orie and connected the 2 wards. It was a magical structure rumored to have been built by dwarves. Whenever the twin moons, Selene and Luna, appeared in the sky, the bridge would illuminate brilliantly and reflect their splendor. Adam listened with fascination. The conversation soon shifted toward Magi. One of the mercenaries mentioned rumors of a secret neighborhood within Moon City that only Magi could access. The more Adam heard, the more excited he became. He declared that he couldn't wait to enter Clover Academy and become a Magus. Lila jokingly told him not to forget them when he became successful. Realizing why the mercenaries were so friendly, Adam simply agreed. He knew they meant no harm. The group spent the rest of the evening talking. They even convinced Adam to try ale for the first time. Unlike the noble children, Adam was easygoing and respectful, making him popular among the mercenaries. Not everyone was pleased by this scene. From another campfire, Jeffrey and several other boys watched Adam laughing with the mercenaries. One freckled boy angrily complained that Adam had taken his family heirloom sword during one of their confrontations. Jeffrey mockingly suggested he go retrieve it himself. The boy immediately fell silent, remembering the painful beating Adam had given him days earlier. Jeffrey scoffed and turned his gaze back toward Adam. As he watched the boy enjoying himself, a cold idea formed in his mind. He knew the magical beast attacks would become more dangerous as they approached the Nightingale Kingdom. And amidst that chaos, Jeffrey decided he would settle the score. After all, Adam had humiliated him and taken his money. Jeffrey silently swore that the commoner would never make it to Moon City. Jeffrey's hatred continued to grow, but the caravan had more immediate problems to worry about as it entered Crest Valley. This vast valley, surrounded by mountains and inhabited by countless magical beasts, was one of the most dangerous parts of the journey. Travelers normally followed routes that had been carefully scouted by Magi beforehand. Anyone foolish enough to travel through the valley alone was practically seeking death. From this point onward, Moon City was only about 3 weeks away. However, everyone also knew that the closer they got to their destination, the more dangerous the beast attacks would become. Looking out from his carriage window, Adam admired the scenery. Over the past 2 months, he had seen more of the world than he ever had during his entire childhood. In the distance, foxes watched the caravan cautiously while their cubs played nearby. Elsewhere, herds of horses with fiery manes ran freely across the landscape. Despite the beautiful sights, Adam understood the dangers hidden beneath the surface. From conversations with Rick and the other mercenaries, he had learned that Crest Valley claimed lives almost every time children were escorted through it. Even with Magi accompanying the caravan, casualties were common. As he thought about this, his hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of his sword. While he was looking outside, a timid voice suddenly called out to him. A girl with twin ponytails nervously asked how much longer it would take to reach Moon City. She admitted that she could barely endure the journey anymore. Adam could understand her feelings. Most of the noble children had never experienced such hardship before. Months of travel, cramped carriages, and constant danger had exhausted them mentally and physically. Repeating what he had heard from the mercenaries, Adam explained that they would reach the borders of the Nightingale Kingdom in about 2 weeks. After that, it would take another week to arrive at Moon City. The answer relieved many of the children who overheard the conversation. After surviving more than 2 months on the road, a few more weeks didn't sound too bad. At least, that's what they believed. Later that evening, the caravan stopped on elevated ground to make camp. While the mercenaries prepared tents and campfires, the blue-eyed man in the olive cloak sat inside one of the carriages reading as usual. Suddenly, he lifted his head and looked into the distance. After a moment, he calmly stated that it was time for them to make their move. The other 2 olive-cloaked Magi inside the carriage looked in the same direction. One of them coldly suggested allowing the mercenaries to handle the situation first. He believed the children needed tempering and that Clover Academy wasn't a place for weak-willed Magi. The blue-eyed Magus simply smiled knowingly and returned to his book. Only a few minutes later, the peaceful evening was shattered. A long, ominous wolf howl echoed through the valley. Then another and another. The mercenaries immediately recognized the danger. A wolf pack, and a large one. While a single magical wolf wasn't especially threatening, an entire pack was a different matter. Wolves fought together with remarkable coordination, making them far more dangerous than most beasts. The mercenary leader instantly began shouting orders. Carriages were moved into defensive positions while everyone scrambled into formation. Then, in the darkness, dozens upon dozens of glowing green eyes appeared. 100 pairs of eyes stared at the camp. The ground trembled as the creatures rapidly approached. The mercenaries quickly identified them as night wolves, a species that became especially powerful after sunset. Their speed increased, and their attacks became even more vicious. Panic spread among the children. Some began crying and calling for their parents. Others drew their weapons and tried to prepare prepare themselves. Rick's expression turned grim as he looked at them. Prepare for battle. Adam immediately unsheathed the sword he had taken from one of the noble boys. Gripping it tightly, he watched the incoming wolf pack with growing anxiety. Nearby, Jeffrey held a loaded crossbow in trembling hands as he stared at the approaching beasts. But then, he turned toward Adam, and despite the danger surrounding them, a cruel light appeared in his eyes. The wolf pack charged straight toward the camp, their jaws open and sharp teeth gleaming in the darkness. When they were only 30 meters away, the mercenary leader gave the order to fire. Dozens of arrows shot through the air and slammed into the front ranks of the wolves. Several beasts collapsed immediately and were trampled by the pack charging behind them. When the wolves drew even closer, another volley was released, killing more of them before they reached the defensive line. Then, the real battle began. The mercenary leader raised his spear and led the charge as the wolves crashed into the barricade of wooden carriages. Mercenaries, stationed between and atop the carriages, swung their weapons relentlessly, turning the battlefield into a bloody slaughter. Wolf howls, screams, curses, and the sounds of battle echoed throughout the camp. At the center of the formation, the children watched in horror. Adam's hands trembled as he stared at the carnage. He had never seen anything so brutal before. The most dangerous thing he had ever faced was a wild boar near his hometown, and even that encounter had nearly killed him. Compared to that, this battle was on an entirely different level. Closing his eyes, Adam forced himself to calm down. When he opened them again, determination had replaced fear. He decided not to recklessly join the mercenaries. Instead, he would remain near the center of the camp and kill any wolf that broke through the blockade. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for that to happen. Only a few minutes into the battle, a young mercenary was overwhelmed and eaten alive. At the same time, a badly wounded wolf slipped through the defensive line and charged directly toward the children. The children froze. Many were too terrified to move. But Adam knew someone had to act. Rather than retreating, he ran straight toward the injured beast. His heart pounded as he closed the distance. Then, as he passed by the wolf, he swung his sword in a powerful horizontal slash. The wolf suddenly stopped moving. A moment later, blood burst from a deep wound running from its neck down toward its waist. The injury wasn't clean enough to split the beast apart, but it was more than enough to finish it. The wolf collapsed to the ground, struggled briefly, and then died from blood loss. Adam stared at the corpse in disbelief. He had actually killed it. Adrenaline surged through his body, making him feel almost invincible. For a brief moment, he even considered joining the mercenaries on the front lines. Fortunately, reason prevailed, and he quickly retreated back toward the center of the camp. Only then did the other children recover from their shock. Many stared at him with disbelief. Some felt admiration, while others felt humiliated that a commoner had displayed more courage than they had. Still, his actions had inspired them. The children's morale rose, and many finally readied their weapons. Jeffrey had witnessed everything. Watching Adam charge toward the wolf and emerge victorious forced him to ask himself whether he could have done the same. Deep down, he already knew the answer. For a moment, he hesitated, but his pride and resentment quickly overwhelmed any uncertainty. In his eyes, Adam's accomplishments only made him more intolerable. Adam had taken his money, beaten him in front of others, and now was earning admiration during the battle. Jeffrey couldn't forgive it. He decided that tonight, Adam would die, and if killing him proved impossible, then he would at least cripple him and destroy any chance he had of becoming a Magus. Meanwhile, the battle grew increasingly desperate. More mercenaries were killed as wolves broke through the defenses. Several children were forced into combat, and 2 of them lost their lives. Despite the worsening situation, the 3 Magi accompanying the caravan still had not intervened. Anxiety spread through both the mercenaries and the children. Adam continued fighting with everything he had. He slashed, stabbed, and hacked at every wolf that came near him. Blood covered his body, some belonging to the wolves and some his own. Completely immersed in the struggle, he focused only on surviving. Then Jeffrey spotted an opportunity. From a relatively safe position, he loaded a bolt into his crossbow and carefully aimed at Adam. To everyone around him, it looked as though he was trying to help. "Adam, let me help you." The moment he shouted those words, he pulled the trigger. The bolt shot through the air, and a wicked grin spread across Jeffrey's face. As Jeffrey's bolt flew through the battlefield, Adam was locked in a desperate struggle against a wolf. After fighting continuously for nearly 10 minutes, he was already exhausted. When he heard Jeffrey call out that he was coming to help, Adam was confused. Of all people, Jeffrey was the last person he expected to assist him. Then the bolt struck. It pierced straight right through his left shoulder. Adam's eyes widened in shock. Before he could react, the wolf seized the opportunity and lunged at him. Its jaws clamped down on his left arm, pinning him to the ground as its teeth tore into flesh. A scream of agony escaped Adam's lips. Meanwhile, Jeffrey watched from afar and cursed inwardly. He had been aiming for Adam's head. Seeing that his target was still alive, he briefly considered firing another shot. However, he quickly abandoned the idea. One accidental hit could be excused, but a second shot might attract the attention of the three Magi. Satisfied that the wolf would finish the job, Jeffrey turned away and resumed shooting at other wolves. On the ground, Adam struggled desperately. The beast was too strong. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't break free. Blood poured from his wounds, and his arm slowly began losing sensation. Tears mixed with blood as despair threatened to consume him. But then memories flashed through his mind. His difficult childhood, the mysterious white lotus, and the black-armored Magus who had stood alone against thousands of enemies. A savage determination ignited within him. That man had fought countless powerful Magi without surrendering. How could Adam die to a single beast before even becoming a Magus? He refused to accept it. Driven by sheer willpower, Adam found strength he didn't know he possessed. He grabbed the bolt lodged in his shoulder and violently ripped it out. The pain was unbearable, but he ignored it. With a roar, he plunged the bolt directly into the wolf's eye. The beast immediately released his arm and tried to retreat. Adam didn't allow it. Wrapping his legs around the wolf's body, he trapped it in place and repeatedly slammed his fist against the protruding bolt. Again and again and again. The bolt sank deeper until it pierced the wolf's brain. Only after the creature stopped moving completely did Adam finally release it. His body felt drained of all strength. He pushed the corpse aside and slowly stood up. His left arm had been mangled by the wolf's teeth and looked horrific. Blood covered him from head to toe, giving him the appearance of a demon risen from a battlefield. Then he looked around and found Jeffrey. The moment Adam remembered the bolt that had struck him, an unprecedented killing intent erupted inside him. For the first time, he realized that some people genuinely wanted him dead. Broken sword in hand, he began walking toward Jeffrey. "I'll kill you." His voice was low and filled with bloodlust. Jeffrey froze. Seeing Adam alive was shocking enough. Seeing him approach, covered in blood with murderous intent, made his legs give out beneath him. Terrified, he fell to the ground and desperately tried to explain that it had all been a mistake. Adam didn't listen. He continued, moving forward. Just as he was about to reach Jeffrey, the blue-eyed Magus in the olive cloak suddenly appeared between them. The man calmly looked at Jeffrey before turning his attention to Adam. He stated that this was neither the time nor the place for their dispute. Adam tried to protest, but the Magus cut him off firmly. Relief flooded Jeffrey's face. He immediately thanked the Magus for saving him. The response he received was anything but comforting. The blue-eyed Magus coldly ordered him to shut up and made it clear that he knew exactly what Jeffrey had done. Jeffrey's face instantly turned pale. At that moment, the other two olive-cloaked Magi appeared beside the blue-eyed man. All three wore the four-leaf clover insignia of Clover Academy. Looking beyond the battlefield, one of them noticed an unusually large night wolf. It appeared to be on the verge of advancing into a rank 2 magical beast. The blue-eyed Magus immediately understood. That explained why such a large wolf pack had gathered and acted with unusual coordination. The woman among them suggested ending the battle quickly. Without another word, the three Magi leaped beyond the carriage barricade and landed directly before the wolf pack. The surrounding wolves instinctively retreated, sensing the overwhelming danger radiating from them. Cracking his knuckles, the blue-eyed Magus looked ahead and prepared to act. At last, the Magi were finally entering the battle. With the three Magi finally stepping onto the battlefield, the tide of the battle immediately began to change. The alpha wolf howled furiously and ordered the remaining wolves to attack them. Although the wolves instinctively feared the Magi, they had no choice but to obey their leader's command. The silver-haired Magus, Kelly, moved first. Crouching down, she pressed both palms against the ground as a glowing magic circle appeared beneath her hands. Using a spell called Spill Water, she generated a large amount of water that rapidly spread spread across the battlefield. The spell itself caused no direct harm, but it soaked the ground and prepared the battlefield for what would come next. Immediately afterward, the burly Magus, Ivan, stepped forward. Stomping the ground, he cast Shape Earth. The terrain beneath the wolves instantly transformed into deep mud. Many of the charging wolves lost their footing and crashed into one another. However, even this wasn't enough to stop the pack entirely. Then Alex made his move. The blue-eyed Magus formed several hand signs before lightning began crackling across his palm. Using shocking grip, he slammed his electrified fist into the muddy ground. The result was devastating. The water and mud instantly became a sea of lightning. Electricity surged across the battlefield, electrocuting the wolves trapped within it. Their bodies convulsed as their fur burned black. Within moments, nearly 100 wolves were dead. The surviving children stared in shock. For many of them, it was their first time witnessing real Magi fighting. Even the veteran mercenaries couldn't hide their amazement. The way the three Magi combined their spells so seamlessly was breathtaking. Adam watched the lightning spread across the battlefield. Although he had once witnessed the far greater power of the black-armored Magus from his vision, he still couldn't look away. The desire to become a Magus grew stronger inside him. One day, he wanted to wield such power himself. Then, without warning, Adam felt his soul tremble. Meanwhile, the alpha wolf was consumed by rage after seeing so many members of its pack slaughtered. Throwing its head back, it released a furious howl before gathering a sphere of darkness inside its mouth. The energy ball rapidly expanded before launching toward the three Magi. Ivan immediately stepped forward. Using mold earth, he raised two massive earthen walls directly in front of the attack. The sphere of darkness smashed into the walls, creating a deafening explosion that sent dust and debris flying everywhere. By the end of the collision, both the attack and the walls had been completely destroyed. Before the dust could settle, Alex and Kelly rushed forward. The alpha wolf attempted to gather another dark sphere, but the two Magi were already upon it. Working together once more, they simultaneously cast Thornvine and Acidic Splash. A thick green vine materialized and lashed toward the wolf. At the same time, Alex coated the vine with corrosive purple acid. The acidic vine wrapped tightly around the alpha wolf, restricting its movement while burning through its fur and poisoning its flesh. The spell, gathering inside its mouth, instantly collapsed. For the first time, panic appeared in the beast's eyes. Then the ground behind it suddenly exploded. Ivan burst out from beneath the earth, wielding a massive black warhammer infused with mana. Without hesitation, he brought the weapon crashing down on the wolf's head. The impact was catastrophic. The alpha wolf's skull exploded instantly, leaving behind nothing but mangled flesh and shattered bone. The moment their leader died, the remaining wolves lost all courage and fled into the darkness. The battle was over. Kelly looked at the ruined corpse and lamented the fact that they could no longer sell it for money. Ivan awkwardly apologized, while Alex reassured him that he had done well. With the threat eliminated, the three Magi returned to camp. The surviving children and mercenaries erupted into cheers, praising the Magi's incredible teamwork and overwhelming strength. Alex and Ivan, however, paid little attention to the admiration. They were already accustomed to such reactions. As they walked back, Alex suddenly noticed someone standing completely motionless amid the celebrations. It was Adam. Unlike everyone else, he seemed completely unaware of what was happening around him. His consciousness had already drifted back into the mysterious space connected to the White Lotus. While everyone celebrated the Magi's victory over the wolf pack, Adam's consciousness drifted elsewhere. He suddenly found himself back inside the mysterious white space connected to the White Lotus. At first, he was startled, but that shock quickly turned into excitement. Ever since obtaining the Lotus, he had tried countless methods to return to this strange place, yet none of them had worked. Now, without warning, he was finally back. Curiously, he looked around at the countless glowing white orbs floating throughout the endless white space. Then he noticed something strange. More and more orbs were appearing. The light slowly materialized around the edges of the space, and before long, nearly 100 new orbs appeared at once. Adam stared in disbelief, unable to understand what was happening. Determined to learn more, he swam toward the nearest orb. After gathering his courage, he reached out and touched it. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then an indescribable feeling washed over him. His mind became calmer than ever before. A profound sense of tranquility filled him, and it felt as though his very soul had been nourished. His thoughts became clearer, and he experienced a level of mental clarity unlike anything he had ever felt. When he finally opened his eyes, he felt completely refreshed. Although he didn't truly understand what a soul was, he instinctively knew knew that these glowing orbs were strengthening something within him. Looking around at the thousands of floating lights, Adam couldn't help imagining what would happen if he absorbed all of them. Excited by the possibility, he immediately moved toward another orb. But before he could touch it, a hand suddenly grabbed his shoulder. The white space vanished. Adam snapped back to reality and found Alex standing before him. Confused, he looked around and realized the battle was over. The wolves had been defeated and the survivors were tending to the wounded. Alex jokingly asked whether he had somehow fallen asleep while standing. Relieved that the danger had passed, Adam tried to respond. Instead, exhaustion finally caught up to him. The brutal battle, his severe injuries, and the massive blood loss overwhelmed him, and he immediately collapsed unconscious. When Adam woke up again, sunlight was streaming through the window of a moving carriage. Slowly opening his eyes, he discovered that his left arm had been heavily bandaged. The moment he tried moving it, a sharp pain shot through his body. As he winced, a cheerful voice greeted him. Looking up, Adam saw a brown-haired girl smiling at him. He was surprised. Until now, none of the noble children had ever spoken to him willingly. Another boy in the carriage answered his question about their location, explaining that they were already deeper inside Crest Valley. As the conversation continued, Adam quickly realized why everyone was suddenly acting differently. During the battle, he had fought off numerous wolves and unknowingly protected several children. The others had witnessed his courage and strength firsthand. In a world where power was respected above all else, their attitudes toward him had naturally changed. For the first time, the children treated him with friendliness instead of contempt. Adam accepted their kindness, but his attention soon drifted elsewhere. He gazed out the carriage window and thought about the White Lotus. The experience inside the mysterious space had already begun producing noticeable effects. His perception felt sharper, his thoughts flowed more smoothly, and his mind seemed to operate more efficiently than before. Everything pointed toward his earlier suspicion being correct. The glowing orbs had strengthened him in some way, but more importantly, Adam had gained a new realization. He now had a strong feeling that he finally knew how to enter the mysterious space within the White Lotus whenever he wished. Now that Adam knew how to enter the mysterious space inside the White Lotus at will, he began piecing together the clues surrounding the artifact. As the children excitedly discussed how the three Magi had slaughtered more than 100 wolves with only a few spells, Adam's thoughts drifted elsewhere. The number of new white orbs that had appeared inside the Lotus space was suspiciously similar to the number of wolves killed during the battle. The coincidence was too great to ignore. Remembering the vision he had witnessed after touching the Lotus, Adam recalled how the black-armored Magus had activated the artifact and wiped out thousands of enemy Magi. The Lotus had devoured all of their souls. Slowly, a terrifying realization formed in his mind. The number of glowing orbs inside the mysterious space seemed to match the number of Magi who had died in that vision. Cold sweat covered his back. The White Lotus wasn't merely storing souls, it was absorbing them, and even more frightening, Adam could consume those souls to strengthen his own. The discovery left him both excited and uneasy. Possessing such an artifact could become an incredible advantage on his path to becoming a Magus, but if others learned about it, the consequences could be unimaginable. He immediately decided that the Lotus would remain his greatest secret. Still worried, Adam questioned the children around him about what had happened after he lost consciousness. When they told him that Alex had personally carried him back to the carriage before a mercenary treated his wounds, Adam became nervous. Had Alex somehow discovered the Lotus? After calming down, he concluded that he was probably overthinking. An artifact capable of hiding within a person's body couldn't be exposed that easily. With that concern temporarily set aside, Adam focused on testing his latest theory. Closing his eyes, he entered a calm state and concentrated on the Lotus. Moments later, he successfully returned to the mysterious white space. His guess had been correct. Looking around, he confirmed that the number of floating orbs closely matched the number of souls devoured during the black-armored Magus's final battle. Adam carefully examined the countless lights surrounding him. Some were tiny and emitted a gentle feeling. Others were as large as watermelons and radiated a pressure that made him uneasy. There were even some larger than his own body. Instinctively, he knew he wasn't ready to absorb those larger souls. While observing the orbs, he noticed one that looked different from the others. Unlike the pure white souls around it, this one occasionally flashed with various colors. Curious, Adam approached it. After studying it for a while and sensing no danger, he decided to absorb it. The moment he touched the orb, the familiar sensation of soul strengthening returned. But this time, something else happened. A flood of information information exploded into his mind. Back in the real world, Adam's body suddenly began trembling inside the carriage. Sweat poured from his forehead as pain twisted his expression. The children around him panicked, asking what was wrong. For several agonizing minutes, it felt as though countless ants were crawling through his brain. His face turned red, veins bulged at his temples, and he struggled to endure the overwhelming sensation. Eventually, the pain subsided. Adam assured the others that his wound was simply acting up and claimed he needed rest. Then he closed his eyes and focused inward. As he sorted through the torrent of information, he gradually realized what had happened. The colored orb hadn't merely strengthened his soul, it had contained memories. More specifically, fragments of memories belonging to one of the Magi whose soul had been devoured by the White Lotus. The memories clashed with his own for hours as he painstakingly organized them. Thanks to the strengthening of his soul, he eventually succeeded. By the time the sun was beginning to set, Adam finally opened his eyes. A strange expression appeared on his face as he processed the knowledge he had inherited. Among the fragments he received, one field of expertise stood out clearly: herbalism. Another 2 weeks passed, and the caravan finally approached the borders of the Nightingale Kingdom. The dangerous wilderness gradually gave way to fertile farmlands, and signs of civilization began appearing once more. Villages and small hamlets dotted the landscape, lifting the spirits of the children who had spent over 3 exhausting months on the road. Since the wolf attack, the caravan had not suffered another major incident. While a few groups of magical beasts had appeared, the 3 Magi dealt with them before they could become a threat. The wolf attack itself had claimed the lives of roughly half a dozen children. Although the Magi could have saved them, they chose not to intervene. The journey served as an unofficial test. In the eyes of the Magi, talent alone wasn't enough to become a Magus. Courage, judgment, and the ability to survive under pressure were equally important. Those who survived the wolf attack had proven they possessed at least some of these qualities. As a result, only around 60 children remained in the caravan. During these 2 weeks, Adam's injuries prevented him from practicing swordsmanship. The mercenaries had already run out of healing potions, and he didn't feel comfortable asking the Magi for assistance. Instead, he devoted all of his attention to the White Lotus. Every day, he entered the mysterious space and absorbed small soul fragments. Alongside the strengthening of his own soul, he continued assimilating the memories related to herbalism. The results were remarkable. Not only did he gain knowledge, but he also inherited practical experience. The information felt natural, as if he had personally spent years studying herbs and brewing potions. The more Adam learned, the more excited he became. Herbalists and potion masters were highly valued in the Magus world, and many of them were wealthy. If he could make use of this knowledge, he might finally solve his future financial problems. With every absorbed soul fragment, his perception improved. His thoughts became faster and clearer, and his mind operated more smoothly than ever before. One evening, as the caravan stopped beside a lake to make camp, Adam stepped outside and breathed in the fresh air. The children had changed significantly over the course of the journey. Tasks such as setting up tents and preparing campfires would once have been beneath noble children, but months of hardship had forced them to mature. As Adam looked around, his gaze landed on Jeffrey. The moment their eyes met, Adam's expression turned cold. Jeffrey immediately looked away and distanced himself. Ever since the wolf attack, he had avoided Adam completely. Watching him leave, Adam silently vowed that he would settle that debt someday. Soon afterward, Adam noticed the 3 Magi sitting by the lakeside. Ivan and Kelly were reading books, while Alex sat alone, casually skipping pebbles across the water. Seeing an opportunity he hadn't had before, Adam approached him. Alex immediately recognized him. Adam respectfully thanked him for helping after the wolf attack. Alex casually dismissed the gratitude, explaining that he had merely thrown Adam into a carriage rather than truly taking care of him. Even so, the conversation reassured Adam somewhat. Alex didn't seem to know anything about the White Lotus, though Adam still decided to remain cautious. Then Alex unexpectedly asked where Adam had learned swordsmanship. Feeling proud, Adam began explaining that he had mostly taught himself. Before he could finish, Alex bluntly concluded that this explained why his swordsmanship was so crude and barbaric. Adam's face immediately stiffened, but he could only awkwardly promise to improve. After recovering from the embarrassment, he seized the opportunity to ask something that had been on his mind for a long time. Taking a deep breath, Adam looked at Alex and asked about the entrance examination for Clover Academy. Alex patiently explained that Clover Academy's entrance examination consisted of 3 separate tests. The first was a comprehensive aptitude test. The second focused on analytical ability, and and the third was a combat test. Adam was surprised to learn that combat was part of the evaluation process. Alex also revealed that students who performed exceptionally well during the examination would receive rewards from the academy. Hearing that, Adam became even more eager to prove himself. After thanking Alex for sharing the information, he prepared to leave. However, Alex stopped him with one final piece of advice. Killing was strictly forbidden inside Moon City and on Clover Academy's grounds. Anyone who violated that rule would face severe punishment. Then, Alex casually added that settling scores outside the city was a different matter entirely. Adam immediately understood the meaning behind those words. Alex was clearly aware of the conflict between him and Jeffrey. Thanking the Magus once more, Adam returned to the campsite. As he passed Jeffrey, the two exchanged cold looks, but neither made a move. Ever since Alex's warning, Jeffrey had stayed away from Adam. Both boys wanted revenge, but neither could act for now. Their feud would have to wait. Soon, another week passed. At last, after more than 3 months of travel, the caravan reached its destination. In the distance, the silhouette of Moon City appeared. The moment the children saw it, excitement exploded throughout the caravan. Everyone leaned out of the carriage windows and stared in awe. Even from afar, the city looked enormous. Massive buildings rose above the skyline, while countless giant trees could be seen throughout the city. Known as the Jewel of the South, Moon City was the most famous city in the southern region of the continent. Adam couldn't stop smiling as he stared at it. Even the South Ward alone looked many times larger than his entire hometown. As the caravan drew closer, the city's defenses became visible. 3 layers of towering walls surrounded Moon City. Each wall was taller than the one before it, and silver-armored knights patrolled the battlements above. When the caravan arrived at one of the main gates of the South Ward, the guards immediately stopped them. The leader of the Crescent Mercenary Company presented the necessary documents and explained that they were escorting children who would be taking Clover Academy's entrance examination. Although the guards recognized the mercenary company, they still inspected every carriage according to protocol. Ivan impatiently complained about the delay, but after recognizing the Clover Academy insignia on his clothes, the guards respectfully apologized and continued their inspection. Eventually, the caravan received permission to enter. Since Adam's carriage was near the back of the convoy, he entered later than most of the others. As his carriage passed through the massive 18-foot-tall adamantine gate, he could only stare in amazement. The moment they entered the city, a completely different world unfolded before him. The streets were crowded with people from many races. Besides humans, Adam saw elves, dwarves, and gnomes for the very first time in his life. Everything around him felt vibrant and alive. The caravan traveled along South Lunar Avenue, one of the city's major roads. Cobblestone streets stretched in every direction, lined with bustling shops and crowded market stalls. One thing stood out to Adam more than anything else. Trees were everywhere. Some were taller than buildings, some buildings were taller than trees, and in certain cases, the trees themselves were the buildings. Adam even spotted bridges made from enormous branches and towering trees filled with windows where people lived. The abundance of vegetation gave the city a refreshing atmosphere, unlike anything he had experienced before. Combined with the thriving trade and countless merchants, it was obvious why Moon City had become the greatest mercantile city in the Southern Federation. After traveling through the city for about 20 minutes, the caravan finally came to a stop. Standing before them was a magnificent marble archway. At its center was a symbol Adam instantly recognized, a 4-leaf clover. Seeing it, excitement surged through him. After months of hardship, danger, and endless travel, they had finally arrived. They were at Clover Academy. The moment the caravan arrived at Clover Academy, the children eagerly grabbed their belongings and rushed toward the entrance. But before anyone could enter, Alex, Ivan, and Kelly stepped in front of them. Alex congratulated the group for enduring 3 difficult months of travel, surviving dangerous situations, and finally reaching Moon City. The children erupted into cheers. For many of them, the journey had been the hardest experience of their lives. Some were so overwhelmed with relief that they nearly cried. Then Alex immediately shattered their excitement. Despite reaching the academy, none of them were students yet. The entrance examination was still 7 days away, and until they passed it, they were forbidden from entering the academy grounds. The children instantly exploded into protests. Some demanded explanations, others complained about the unfairness of the situation, and a few even started crying. Ivan silenced everyone with a single shout. Alex then informed them that they would be staying at Sherman's Inn for the next week. Since the inn belonged to Clover Academy, prospective students would receive a discount. Unfortunately for the children, a discount still meant they had to pay. The complaints only grew louder. Many of the noble children were horrified that they would have to spend their own money. Among those suffering the most were Jeffrey and the other children Adam had beaten and robbed during the journey. Their money pouches were now sitting comfortably on Adam's belt. Realizing their predicament, Adam couldn't resist mocking them. He deliberately showed off his bulging pouch and grinned at them. Jeffrey and his companions nearly exploded with rage. After enjoying their frustration, Adam turned his attention back to Alex. The Magus gave one final piece of advice. Moon City was safe, but the children should avoid wandering the streets after sunset. Most importantly, they were required to return to the academy entrance 7 days later at sunrise for the examination. With that, the three Magi departed to report the completion of their mission. The mercenaries also said their farewells and went their separate ways. Soon, the children split into groups and began exploring Moon City. Meanwhile, Jeffrey's group quickly descended into panic. Without money, they had no way to pay for lodging or the academy entrance fee. The others immediately blamed Jeffrey for their situation. After arguing for a while, Jeffrey suggested taking their jewelry and valuables to the Mercantile Guild to pawn them for money. The group reluctantly agreed. As they left, Jeffrey's hatred for Adam deepened even further. Unable to find him in the crowd, he silently swore revenge. While Jeffrey dealt with his problems, Adam began exploring the South Ward. The scale of Clover Academy amazed him. The campus occupied most of the district, while the remaining area was filled with markets, inns, taverns, and businesses that served students. Eventually, Adam reached the bustling market district beside the river Ore. The harbor was crowded with ships, sailors, merchants, and travelers from many races. Everywhere he looked, people were buying, selling, bargaining, laughing, and entertaining one another. Compared to his hometown, the scene felt almost unreal. Adam wandered through the streets in awe while carefully protecting his money pouch. The deeper he ventured into the market, the more fascinated he became. There were exotic goods, dwarven-crafted weapons, fresh produce, roadside stalls, and elegant shops. After spending a long time exploring, he finally found the place he had been searching for, a store decorated with flowers and unusual plants. Above the entrance hung a wooden sign, "Herbs and More." Ever since the wolf attack, Adam's injured arm had continued bothering him. Now that he possessed extensive herbal knowledge from the memories he had absorbed, he wanted to see if he could find something to help treat it. Gently rubbing the bandages wrapped around his arm, Adam pushed open the door and stepped inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, his eyes widened. Without warning, a massive two-headed vulture let out a piercing screech and lunged straight at him. Its enormous maw closed in rapidly, and for a brief moment, Adam froze. Countless thoughts raced through his mind. Why was a magical beast attacking him inside Moon City? Wasn't killing forbidden within the city? Was he really about to die the moment he arrived? Then, deep within his soul, the White Lotus suddenly stirred. The artifact slowly rotated and released a calming aura that instantly cleared his mind. As his panic vanished, Adam noticed something strange. The terrifying vulture had become translucent. Realization struck him immediately. The creature wasn't real. A moment later, the vulture passed harmlessly through his body and disappeared into thin air. Before Adam could process what had happened, a surprised voice echoed through the shop. Someone remarked that it was impressive for him to see through the illusion. Adam hurriedly looked around, but couldn't find anyone. Then the voice told him to look down. Standing before him was an elderly gnome with a bald head, pointed ears, and a thick white beard. The old gnome was smoking from a pipe while carefully observing him. Excited, Adam initially mistook him for a dwarf. Unfortunately, the gnome responded by smacking him on the head with his pipe and angrily correcting him. He was a gnome, not a dwarf. After apologizing, Adam listened as the old gnome questioned how he had seen through the illusion. According to him, ordinary people without mana shouldn't have been able to recognize it. Adam immediately realized the White Lotus was responsible. However, there was no way he could reveal that secret. Instead, he innocently claimed that he had simply felt the vulture was fake. The gnome stared into his eyes for several several moments before eventually letting the matter drop. When Adam asked why the illusion had been cast in the first place, the old man simply replied that life needed a little excitement. Ignoring the gnome's strange sense of humor, Adam began exploring the shop. The interior was far larger than it appeared from the outside. Shelves filled with herbs, flowers, spices, books, potions, ointments, and oils covered the walls. Thanks to the herbalism memories he had absorbed from the White Lotus, Adam recognized many of the items immediately. Eventually, his attention landed on a healing potion. Without thinking, he picked up the vial and examined it. The moment he uncorked it, the knowledge inside his mind automatically began analyzing its ingredients. He calmly listed several components used in the potion and even pointed out an unfamiliar earthen powder that appeared to be part of an experimental modification. The gnome froze. He stared at Adam, then at the potion, and then back at Adam again. This made no sense. Adam clearly wasn't a magus, yet his knowledge of herbalism rivaled that of trained professionals. When questioned, Adam quickly claimed that he only possessed a bit of theoretical knowledge and wasn't a real herbalist. After a long silence, the gnome finally confirmed that Adam's analysis was largely correct. The mysterious powder had indeed come from one of his personal experiments using the shell of a lake worm. Satisfied, Adam politely requested to buy the healing potion. The answer nearly made him choke. The potion cost 5 platinum coins, or 50 gold coins. The price was far beyond what Adam expected. Seeing his reaction, the old gnome grinned mischievously. Then he offered an alternative. Instead of paying, Adam could receive the potion for free. Adam immediately became suspicious. After everything that had happened since entering the shop, he knew there was definitely a catch. Carefully eyeing the old gnome, he asked what the man wanted in return. The old gnome, impressed that Adam could identify potion ingredients just by sight and smell, agreed to hand over the healing potion on one condition. He wanted to meet Adam's herbalism teacher, believing such skill could only come from an extraordinary master. Caught off guard, Adam had no real teacher to offer. After a smack on the head for hesitating, he spun a convincing lie. He claimed that years ago, a mysterious, injured woman had wandered into his life. He nursed her back to health, and in gratitude, she taught him everything she knew about herbalism and confirmed his talent for spellcasting. Once fully healed, she left for unknown lands, but not before pointing him toward Clover Academy. The story blended truth with fiction. A wandering magus really had tested his talent and set him on this path, but the rest was invented on the spot. The gnome bought the story, stroking his beard as he mused about kindness leading Adam to the path of a magus. Losing interest, once he realized he couldn't actually meet this teacher, he returned to his counter and agreed to sell the healing potion for 5 platinum pieces. Adam, ever thrifty, tried to haggle for a discount, annoying the gnome further. In the end, he paid 50 gold pieces instead of platinum, keeping his precious platinum coins untouched since he'd learned they were needed for the academy's entrance fee. Despite his gruff exterior, the gnome couldn't help smiling after Adam left, amused by the boy's antics. With the potion secured, Adam made his way to Sherman's Inn, the place Magus Alex had recommended. There, a cheerful young receptionist greeted him and explained the lodging rates after a student discount. A week's stay would cost 10 silver and 50 bronze pieces, which included meals 3 times a day. Adam balked at the price, calling it expensive, but paid in full anyway, silently cursing the cost. A young inn worker led him through the property and into a large courtyard where an enormous tree stood at the center. To Adam's amazement, guests were staying inside rooms built directly into the tree's trunk. His room was located at the very center of the trunk, and once the boy escorted him inside and left, Adam took a moment to admire the surprisingly luxurious setup. Curious, he wandered toward the balcony to check out the view, and the moment he looked outside, what he saw left him utterly stunned. The view from the balcony left Adam speechless. Stretching out before him was the Lunar Bridge, the famous landmark connecting the south and north wards, glowing under the light of the twin moons, Selene and Luna. It looked like it was woven from countless stars, and Adam stood there, marveling at the beauty of the magic world. Back inside, he unwrapped the bandage on his crippled left arm and drank the healing potion in one gulp. A sweet taste gave way to bitterness, and soon an itching sensation spread through his arm as the bones, tendons, muscles, and skin all began regenerating. Within minutes, his arm was completely healed. Amazed at the potion's power, he showered, enjoyed the luxury of his room, and went to bed excited for the entrance exam just a week away. The week passed quickly, and the day of Clover Academy's entrance examination arrived. Adam walked through the crowded streets streets in his worn but clean clothes, his hair now grown to his shoulders. Reaching the academy's white marble archway, he was stunned to find hundreds of children, at least 500, already lined up from across the Nightingale Kingdom and beyond. Standing quietly in line, Adam quickly became a target for mockery. Other children sneered at his shabby clothing, calling him a farm boy and telling him to go back to the fields. Adam ignored them, focused only on the exam ahead. A freckled youth in front of him decided to provoke him further, grabbing his shoulder and repeating the insults. But when Adam opened his eyes and coldly told him to back off, the boy's knees buckled. Overwhelmed by an inexplicable pressure and a sudden headache, the freckled boy fled to the back of the line, leaving the others confused but unwilling to bother Adam again. The reason became clear over the past week. Adam had spent his time absorbing souls and studying herbalism, growing his soul strength immensely. That hidden power was now strong enough to emit pressure capable of frightening others just from eye contact. In fact, his soul had already reached the level of a newly ranked Rank 1 Magus. Yet he also sensed himself nearing a limit, feeling increasingly full from consuming so many motes of light within the mysterious space of the White Lotus, unsure of what would happen once he could no longer absorb any more. Before he could dwell on it further, a group of instructors in dark green cloaks bearing the four-leaf clover crest emerged from the academy. An old man at the center addressed the crowd, declaring that the entrance examination was about to begin and instructing everyone to follow him. The children were led into the academy grounds for the first time, walking past beautiful stone and wood buildings surrounded by greenery until they reached a clearing filled with tents. There, the old Magus announced the first hurdle, the aptitude test. Anyone below a C-grade aptitude would be eliminated immediately, since the academy had no interest in nurturing students without real talent. Nervous murmurs spread through the crowd, since none of the children knew what grade their talent actually was. Confused about the grading system, Adam asked the boy standing next to him, a chubby noble dressed in fine black silk robes. Unlike the others, this boy, Edward, didn't mock Adam for his appearance. He explained that aptitude was ranked from A to F, skipping E for reasons even he found strange, and that a higher grade meant a greater potential to advance as a Magus. Adam introduced himself, and the two shared a brief, friendly exchange before being called to enter the testing tents separately, parting on good terms. Inside his tent, a Magus instructed Adam to stand at the center of a glowing formation for as long as he could endure. As the formation activated, Adam felt increasing pressure crushing down on his body, though his mind remained largely unaffected. After enduring 4 minutes of intense strain, sweat pouring down his face, he finally gave in and asked for it to stop. The examiner reviewed the results and declared that Adam had passed with a B-grade aptitude, though only barely. Relieved, Adam filled out a form with his personal details and moved on to the next tent, noticing that the crowd of children had thinned significantly. Only about 55% of examinees were making it past this first test, and the elimination rate was expected to rise further in the next round. At the next tent, Adam met a burgundy-haired lady administrator who reviewed his form and praised his B-grade aptitude. She explained that this next stage was an analytical test. With a snap of her fingers, an incomplete geometrical pattern appeared floating in the air before him, missing several lines, angles, and shapes. She instructed him to complete the model. Confused and unsure how to even begin, Adam admitted he didn't know how to proceed, only to be told with a smirk that figuring that out was exactly what the test was meant to determine. With only 2 minutes on the clock and no idea what he was doing, Adam forced himself to focus on the glowing pattern. Studying the lines and shapes carefully, he suddenly realized the model wasn't flat at all. It was a three-dimensional figure, with its shapes mirroring each other at different points. His mind, sharpened from months of soul absorption, worked at incredible speed as he began connecting point after point, drawing lines that materialized in the air before him. What started slow soon became instinctive, his hands moving fluidly as he pieced the model together like an artist finishing a masterpiece. Just seconds before time ran out, he completed the final connection, and the model burst into light before dissolving into motes of light. The burgundy-haired examiner sat stunned, barely able to hide her shock. She praised Adam's performance and sent him through the back exit to the next test, but internally she was reeling. That geometrical pattern had actually been an incomplete spell model for a rank 1 spell, and passing only required completing 25% of it. Adam had gone far beyond that. In the Academy's long history, only a handful of students had ever fully completed this test, and every one of them had gone on to become powerful Magi. Recognizing the implications, she immediately used a mana-infused disc risk to alert the academy's higher-ups that special attention needed to be given to this boy. Unaware of the storm he'd just caused, Adam stepped out into a grand square filled with fountains, white-paved streets, and children who had passed the first 2 tests. He settled under a tree to rest, wondering about the final combat test ahead, when Edward found him and excitedly confirmed he'd also passed with a B-grade aptitude. Edward explained that while A and B grades were rare in the world at large, Clover Academy handpicked only the best students, making B grade common here. When Adam asked whether aptitude could increase over time, Edward firmly said no. Only skills like analysis and combat could be sharpened, but aptitude was fixed from birth. This left Adam quietly wondering if the White Lotus's nourishment was responsible for his own growing aptitude, though he had no way to confirm it. Soon, the Academy's headmistress, Professor Godfrey, emerged with a group of Magi to address the crowd. She revealed that although the entrance exam had 3 parts, only the first 2 were required for admission. The third and final combat test existed solely to determine first-year rankings. Realization dawned on the students as she announced that everyone present, having passed the first 2 trials, was officially accepted. Of the more than 700 children who had started the day, only around 350 remained. With a warm smile, Professor Godfrey welcomed them all as the newest members of Clover Academy. The square erupted in cheers as the news sank in. Every child there had just been accepted into Clover Academy, the most prestigious institute for magic in the entire southern continent. Adam, overjoyed, threw his hands up and even hugged Edward while jumping around in excitement. Watching over the celebration, Professor Godfrey observed the students with quiet interest. Her gaze passed over a cold, composed girl with blonde hair, green eyes, and round glasses, then landed on a smug blonde boy crossing his arms, Jeffrey. Both, she noted, had A-grade aptitudes. Finally, her eyes settled on Adam, still jumping around joyfully with Edward, and she smiled to herself, recognizing him as the prodigy with monstrous comprehension skills that had already caught someone named Berger's attention. Once the excitement settled, Professor Godfrey instructed everyone to head into the auditorium for the combat assessment, which would determine first-year rankings. The top 3 performers would receive rare and valuable rewards. The students followed the professors into a massive auditorium filled with hovering octagonal mats. Godfrey explained that these mats were inscribed with illusion formations. Sitting on one would pull a student's mind into a simulated battle. This surprised everyone who had expected a real physical fight. She then delivered a passionate speech about why Magi needed combat skills despite their ability to cast spells, explaining that a true Magus must be ready to fight even without magic, standing firm against all odds. Her words about being scholars, warriors, and Magi ignited the students, who cheered in unison, Adam included, his resolve hardening at her message. Final-year students in olive cloaks then arrived to help oversee the new students entering the illusion formations. Among them was a striking young woman with black hair and blue eyes, who playfully surprised Edward with a hug from behind, teasing him and praising him for getting in. She turned out to be Elaine, Edward's older sister. When introduced to Adam, he was immediately flustered by her beauty, awkwardly fumbling his own introduction before turning red with embarrassment. Elaine found this endearing, giggled, and went off to help other students. Adam then jokingly asked Edward if he was adopted, unable to reconcile Edward's appearance with his sister's, leading to more lighthearted bickering between the 2 friends. As the first batch of students began taking their seats on the illusion mats, the assessment began. Within a minute, half of them were ejected from their formations, clearly defeated inside the simulation, many looking terrified and some even fainting from the ordeal. But amid the chaos, one student stood out. The girl with the A-grade aptitude was doing something remarkable inside her illusion, extraordinary enough to leave even the watching professors stunned. The professors watching the illusion formations were thoroughly impressed by the girl's combat skills, remarking that it was rare to find someone gifted in both magic and fighting at such a young age. Professor Godfrey asked for her background and learned her name was Lisa DeClaire, an A-grade aptitude student from Faber Province, hailing from the DeClaire Magus family. Godfrey recalled that the DeClaire family head had been killed years earlier in a conflict with the Gracie family, and realized Lisa must be his daughter, rising as a genius from her family's ruin. After battling wild beasts inside the simulation for 5 minutes, Lisa was finally overwhelmed and ejected, calmly stepping off her mat. The other students were stunned by her performance, recognizing it as a likely record and confirming her as the strongest fighter among the new recruits. Watching from nearby, Edward grumbled about her aloof attitude, while Adam quietly took note of the bar she'd set. As the second batch of students entered the formation session, Adam spotted Jeffrey among them and grew visibly cold with anger, though he brushed off Edward's questions about it. To change the subject, Adam asked why no elves, dwarves, or other races attended the academy, and Edward explained that different races required different magical training methods, so Clover Academy was exclusively for humans. When the second batch began, Jeffrey was ejected in embarrassing fashion just moments after the 1-minute mark, confirming Adam's suspicion that Jeffrey had always been all bark and no bite, someone who only caused trouble when backed by others. Adam couldn't help but laugh at his poor showing. The top performer of this batch turned out to be a friendly-looking, sturdily built boy who lasted 4.5 minutes, taking second place overall. Adam made mental notes of both this boy and Lisa as benchmarks. Finally, it was Adam and Edward's turn. Before entering, a final-year student explained the rules. They'd fight wild, non-magical beasts with rankings based on kills and survival time, and importantly, no one could actually die in the simulation, though the pain from injuries would feel completely real. Reassured that death wasn't a real risk, Adam felt free to fight without holding back. Once the formation activated, Adam found himself on a vast plain that felt astonishingly real, deepening his fascination with illusion magic. A voice prompted him to choose a weapon, and dozens of options appeared before him. He selected a sword, the weapon he was most familiar with, even though he had no real skill with it. Moments later, 6 hyenas emerged in the distance, growling and slowly trying to surround him. Without hesitation, Adam charged straight into the pack, laughing wildly as he threw himself into the fight. The moment Adam charged into the hyena pack, the illusion proved shockingly lifelike, the beasts reacting with real shock and ferocity. Adam grinned wildly, leaping and cutting one down mid-air before landing amidst the pack and unleashing a chaotic slaughter. His swordsmanship was rough and untrained, but instinct carried him through, dodging attacks and striking beasts down one after another as more crawled in to replace the fallen. Watching him fight, it became clear Adam was discovering just how much he genuinely enjoyed combat. On the stage, the professors reacted with mixed opinions, some calling him barbaric and mercenary-like, others recognizing raw, unpolished talent that could be shaped into something formidable with proper training. As the 4-minute mark passed, Adam had taken heavy damage after 3 minutes of being unscathed, blood loss slowing him down as wounds piled up with every kill. Still, knowing he couldn't truly die, he pushed through the pain and kept fighting. When the clock hit 4 minutes 30 seconds, he claimed second place, pushing the previously ranked burly youth down to third. Lisa, still holding first place, watched Adam intently, growing tense as he crept closer to her 5-minute record. Back inside the illusion, Adam took brutal hits, bitten, tackled, and nearly overwhelmed, but he fought back mercilessly, killing hyena after hyena despite dwindling strength. Surrounded by dozens more beasts and barely able to stand, he let out a defiant roar and charged forward anyway, determined to find his limit. When the 5-minute mark passed, the crowd erupted. Adam had broken Lisa's record and claimed first place. Everyone watched in disbelief as he remained the only student still active in the simulation, drenched in sweat and shaking, yet unyielding. Jeffrey and his friends seethed with resentment, humiliated that a so-called peasant had outperformed an A-grade aptitude holder like Jeffrey. Edward, on the other hand, was thrilled and cheered him on. Lisa felt a mix of anger and disappointment, upset at losing both her top ranking and the reward that came with it. As the clock passed 6 minutes, disbelief turned into full-blown shock among the students, who understood firsthand how brutally the simulation's difficulty escalated with time. On stage, the professors remained impressed, despite some discomfort with Adam's reckless fighting style. Though they acknowledged he likely embraced this aggression because he knew death wasn't truly possible inside the illusion, Professor Godfrey merely smiled, sensing something was about to happen. Finally, as the 7-minute mark arrived, Adam's eyes snapped open. The moment Adam woke up, he instinctively grabbed his neck in panic, having just witnessed a hyena sink its teeth into his throat right before being ejected. Relieved to find himself unharmed, he stood up to find every mat empty and hundreds of students staring at him in stunned silence. Professor Godfrey broke the silence, announcing that Adam had lasted an incredible 7 minutes and 18 seconds, officially placing him first among all first-year students. The auditorium erupted in applause, with even the aloof Lisa begrudgingly joining in for a couple of seconds. Only Jeffrey and his group refused to clap, seething with resentment. Curious, Adam asked Godfrey what the all-time record for the entrance exam was. She revealed it was 7 minutes and 45 seconds, meaning Adam's performance ranked third in the Academy's entire history, a history spanning hundreds of years, predating even the Nightingale Kingdom itself. The revelation left the students speechless. Start from here. With rankings settled, Godfrey directed everyone to complete registration at the administrative building before heading to their dormitories, reminding them that orientation would happen the next day and classes would begin 2 days later. The students filed out excitedly, and registration proceeded quickly, filling out personal details and paying the required 10 platinum piece enrollment fee, which the Academy accepted only in platinum. Each student was then given a wooden trunk and assigned a dorm. Adam and Edward, having already bonded, chose to room together rather than leave it to random assignment. They arrived at their dorm, 52A, on the 3rd floor of the boys' residential building. Adam was amazed by the space: an elegant living room with a chandelier, plush carpeting, a marble bathroom, bunk beds, closets, and a small study area. Edward, used to luxury, was far less impressed and immediately claimed the bottom bunk. Settling in, the two opened their trunks together. Inside, Adam found the Academy's olive-colored uniform cloak bearing the 4-leaf clover insignia, which filled him with pride as he tried it on and posed dramatically. He also found 2 textbooks, Introduction to Arcane Magic and Basics of Spellcasting, along with a mysterious black book radiating a strange aura. Edward explained it was a grimoire, a magical notebook with effectively endless pages used by Magi to record spell models and notes. Adam flipped through its blank pages before setting it aside. Continuing through the trunk, he found a leather box containing his reward for placing first in the rankings: a crystal vial of body-cleansing essence oil, a rare and expensive substance that purified and strengthened the body, and a crystal ball containing knowledge of the powerful rank 1 spell, Eldritch Beam, worth 15 platinum pieces on the market. Carefully setting these treasures aside, Adam turned his attention to the 2 remaining items in the trunk: a flask and a scroll, the most valuable of them all, since these were the very things that would finally set him on the path to becoming a true magus. Adam resisted the urge to use the flask and scroll right away, remembering a professor's warning that both items needed to be used with a calm state of mind. Patient as ever, he decided to wait until after orientation the next day. That day, senior students and faculty gave the new students a full tour of the Academy's facilities, taking up nearly the entire day. Once everyone returned to their dorms in the evening, Adam finally decided the time had come. He and Edward grabbed their flasks and scrolls, tucked them into a satchel, and headed out to meet Elaine, who had promised to help them through the advancement process. The two ran to Elm Grove, a small forest on campus, and found Elaine waiting in a gazebo with a friend. Elaine introduced her as Jenna, explaining that she would be the one guiding Adam through his advancement. Jenna, initially unimpressed by Adam's plain clothing, softened slightly after he thanked her sincerely. She made clear she was only helping because Elaine had asked. Adam then thanked Elaine as well, and she affectionately ruffled his hair, telling him to simply call her Elaine, leaving him blushing and looking away. With introductions done, Jenna got straight to business, instructing Adam to sit at the center of the gazebo. She guided him to unfurl his scroll and press it to the ground. Mysterious symbols spread from the scroll onto the floor, forming a circular formation around him while transmitting hidden knowledge directly into his mind. Next, Jenna told him to drink the potion of hope from his flask. Adam swallowed the strange green liquid in one go, and it immediately spread through his body and mind as gas, pulling him into a trance-like state. When he emerged from it, he could sense something new in the world around him, mana present everywhere, though invisible to normal sight. Jenna then instructed him to circulate the mana extraction technique, the final step of the process. This too had been transferred into his mind through the scroll. It was Clover Academy's own secret method, the Clover Mana Extraction Technique. Adam began practicing it immediately, visualizing mana as tiny fireflies being drawn into his body. As the mana entered his flesh, his body trembled as it worked its way deep inside him. After about 10 minutes, feeling as though he'd reached his limit, Adam stopped, and in that moment, he knew with certainty that he had become a rank 1 magus. Elaine and Edward cheered for him, genuinely happy, and even Jenna gave an approving nod. Adam began to smile back at them, but his expression suddenly froze. From deep within his soul, he felt a powerful resonance surge through him, one he recognized instantly. It was the White Lotus. Sensing the resonance, Adam immediately dove into his own mind, and what he found left him stunned. Where he once entered directly into the mysterious space of the White Lotus, he now hovered above a vast, boundless body of water, with the lotus itself transformed pristine plain white, surrounded by 3 verdant leaves floating at the center. Recalling fragments of knowledge he'd absorbed about higher Magus ranks, Adam realized in shock that this endless water resembled a sea, something that shouldn't exist at his current rank at all. Before he could process it further, Edward's voice pulled him back to reality. Adam brushed off his daze, claiming he was simply overwhelmed by the new sensations of becoming a Magus, then stepped aside as Elaine guided Edward through his own advancement ritual. Throughout the process, Adam remained lost in thought, certain that what had just happened to him should only occur upon reaching rank 2, yet somehow, thanks to the White Lotus and the fragmented knowledge from the soul he'd once absorbed, it had happened prematurely. Once Edward successfully became a Magus, Adam pushed his troubling thoughts aside to celebrate with his friend. Elated at their shared success, the two hugged, and Edward invited Adam back to their dorm to crack open a bottle of fine wine to celebrate. Adam, having developed a taste for alcohol during his travels, happily agreed, partly to celebrate and partly to settle his own inner turmoil. The two got thoroughly drunk that night. The next morning brought consequences. Badly hungover, Adam and Edward sprinted through the academy's halls, desperately trying to reach their first class on time, only to arrive 30 minutes late. Their fiery-haired professor was furious, cutting off Adam's attempt at an excuse and punishing both of them to stand at the back of the room holding their ears for the remainder of the lecture, much to the class's amusement. Despite the humiliation, the lecture continued, covering the fundamentals of rank 1, known as the Mana Foundation stage. The professor explained that this rank consisted of 5 minor stages: the flesh stage, muscle stage, bone stage, organ stage, and finally the neural stage, each representing mana, progressively nourishing deeper parts of the body until it reached the brain and nervous system, forming mana channels throughout the body. A student asked whether the final stage was dangerous, given its effect on the brain, and the professor confirmed it was indeed the most perilous milestone a Magus would face. Failure could result in irreversible brain damage. He reassured the class that proper guidance from the academy would help them navigate this risk safely, though he offered no details about what came after rank 1, as such knowledge was considered highly confidential. Yet Adam already understood what lay beyond the neural stage. Advancing to rank 2 required 2 things: guiding mana through the body's channels to condense it at the center, and forming what was known as the spirit sea, something that only followed after the brain had been fully nourished by mana. And thanks to the White Lotus, Adam had already accomplished this impossible feat, forming a spirit sea despite still being merely a rank 1 Magus. 5 days had passed since Adam began his studies at Clover Academy. The early lessons focused purely on foundational knowledge and mastering the mana extraction technique, giving new students time to adjust to life as Magi before diving into more complex subjects. By Friday, with classes done for the week, Adam reminded Edward that he wanted to visit the herb store to buy supplies. He needed a special water solution that, combined with his body-cleansing essence oil reward, would produce a far more potent effect knowledge he'd gained from the absorbed memories inside him. He also planned to invest in a set of potion brewing apparatuses, a costly purchase but one he expected would pay off once he started selling his own potions. The two dropped their things at the dorm and headed into the lively streets of South Ward, making their way to the harbor market as the city lit up under the glow of the lunar bridge. Before entering Herbs and More, Adam couldn't resist pulling a prank, mockingly bowing and calling Edward Lord Edward to feed his friend's ego. Edward, delighted, played along and strutted through the door, first only to freeze in terror at the sight of a 3-headed dog glaring at him. He screamed and fell to the ground before realizing it was nothing more than an illusion conjured by Adam, who burst out laughing at his reaction. Edward, embarrassed and furious, swore revenge, though his anger cooled once he realized only a skilled Magus could cast something so realistic. Inside, Adam greeted the old gnome Burger respectfully, having picked up some etiquette from Edward. Burger teased him for suddenly acting refined, then turned his attention to Edward, immediately recognizing him as Victor's son. Edward was stunned that he knew his father, and Burger explained that he was the one who had long been supplying the medicine that treated Edward's mother's illness. Overwhelmed with emotion, Edward bowed and thanked him tearfully, only to get smacked on the forehead with Burger's pipe for getting too sentimental. Composing himself, Edward properly introduced himself and thanked Magus Burger. Turning to Adam, Burger asked what he needed. Adam handed over a prepared list of ingredients and supplies for potion brewing. Burger, unsurprised, acknowledged that Adam was finally starting his brewing journey and quoted a price of 450 gold pieces. stunned by the steep cost. Adam nonetheless braced himself when Burger offered a discount with his usual mischievous smirk, leaving Adam with an uneasy sense of déjà vu as he cautiously asked what the old gnome wanted in return this time. Burger studied the list carefully and correctly deduced that Adam intended to brew healing potions, strength potions, venom antidotes, and explosion potions. Impressed by his own accurate read, he then asked about 3 unusual ingredients on the list: mana-infused distilled water, citrus extracts, and sanguine leech, which didn't fit any of the potions he'd already identified. Adam explained that these were meant to create a water solution that would enhance the effects of his body-cleansing essence oil, detailing how the citrus extract and mana-infused water would expand the body's pores, while the sanguine leech acted as a primer to bind the solution with the oil. Burger was stunned by the cleverness of the method, remarking that such ordinary ingredients could produce such a powerful effect. He asked if Adam's mysterious wandering teacher had taught him this, and Adam lied smoothly, confirming it. Burger warned him, however, that while the combination would make the oil far more potent, it would also cause tremendous pain. Adam shrugged off the warning, declaring he was willing to endure it, which earned a rare nod of approval from the old gnome. Burger then led Adam and Edward up to the second floor, revealing his personal laboratory filled with glassware, ingredients, and finished potions. Adam was awestruck, dreaming of one day having a lab of his own. At the center of the room stood a large cauldron filled with swirling green liquid. With a snap of his fingers, Burger summoned empty vials that filled themselves with the liquid, amazing the 2 boys who hadn't yet learned spellcasting at the academy. When Burger ordered the cauldron to be moved, a towering, 6-foot humanoid figure made of black metal emerged from the shadows, terrifying Edward. Burger calmly explained it was a golem, a magically created construct used as a mindless, obedient servant, expensive, but incapable of speech or independent thought. The golem then gathered several items Burger requested: a Ganish wooden tub, citrus fruits, and sanguine leeches. Burger then instructed Adam to bring out his body-cleansing essence oil so he could personally observe the process. When Adam pointed out the oil was back in his dorm room, Burger dismissed the concern, pulling out a small metallic whistle and blowing it silently. Moments later, the space in front of him distorted and tore open, releasing a small black puppy that bounded out and affectionately jumped on Burger, licking his face. Adam and Edward stared in disbelief at witnessing a creature casually tear open a rift in space itself. Burger, amused by their shock, remarked that this was something the Academy would never teach them. Adam and Edward stood frozen in disbelief, watching the tiny black puppy playfully tug at Burger's beard, still reeling from the fact that this adorable creature had just torn open a rift in space to appear before them. As the crack in the void began sealing itself, Adam caught a brief glimpse of what lay beyond a place of overwhelming, intensely saturated colors unlike anything he'd ever seen. The sight left his head spinning, and by the time he recovered, the rift had already closed. Shaken, Adam asked Burger what that place was. The old gnome, surprised, remarked that Adam possessed unusually high spiritual power for someone who had just become a Magus. Confused, Adam turned to ask what he meant, only to notice Edward already collapsed on the ground. Drooling, a single glance at the place called the Spirit World had knocked him out cold. Burger brushed off any concern for the boy's condition. When Adam pressed for more details about spiritual power and the Spirit World, Burger dismissed his questions, telling him to ask his professors at the academy instead. Burger then asked where Adam kept his essence oil, and upon learning it was in his dorm trunk, instructed the puppy, Blackie, to fetch it. Before running off, Blackie circled around Adam and casually urinated on him, leaving Adam indignant. Burger explained this was simply the puppy's way of marking him affectionately. Blackie then tore open another crack in space and disappeared through it. Adam roused Edward awake, but moments later, another, larger rift opened in front of them. Adam shut his eyes in time, but Edward caught sight of the spirit world again and immediately fainted a second time. Blackie emerged from the rift, his tail stretched out and wrapped around Adam's wooden trunk, which he delivered proudly to Burger. Pleased, Burger rewarded the puppy with a fist-sized purple crystal, which Blackie swallowed whole before licking Burger's face and disappearing back into another space crack, barking farewell to Adam on the way out. Left standing in stunned silence, Adam's mind raced with unanswered questions about the spirit world, the strange puppy, and how it had bypassed the Academy's defenses to retrieve his trunk. His thoughts were interrupted when Burger instructed him to bring out the body-cleansing essence oil so they could begin the body remodeling process. The golem poured the mana-infused water into the wooden tub, and Burger extracted extracted citrus essence with a snap of his fingers to mix into the solution. Adam retrieved the essence oil from his trunk and handed it over, then stripped down and climbed into the tub, bracing himself nervously for the pain ahead. Burger reassured him he would do his best to ease the suffering. Taking a deep breath, Adam steeled his resolve and prepared to begin. With a small magic circle at his fingertips, Burger poured the body-cleansing essence oil into the wooden tub where it mixed with the mana-infused water and citrus extract. Nearby, enchanted parchment and quills began recording the entire process on their own. Almost immediately, the mixture started expanding Adam's pores, sending waves of agonizing pain through his body. Burger calmly cast a rank 2 enchantment spell, Ease Emotions, tricking Adam's mind into perceiving less pain even though the sensation itself remained. Gritting through it, Adam endured as the essence oil slowly seeped into his skin. After a few minutes, the oil hit a natural barrier and could no longer penetrate deeper, so Burger ordered the golem to pour in 5 pounds of sanguine leeches. Drawn to Adam's blood, the tiny creatures burrowed straight into his body, tunneling through flesh, muscle, and bone, before dying from the very blood that sustained them. Their deaths left behind microscopic paths that allowed the essence oil to seep even deeper, intensifying Adam's pain to unbearable levels. Burger, fascinated, mused aloud about the brilliance of the herbalist who had supposedly taught Adam this technique, wondering if she hailed from the Uriel continent. As Adam neared the edge of unconsciousness, Burger urged him to push through, reminding him of his own earlier boast, no pain, no gain. Reapplying the Ease Emotions spell, Burger gave Adam just enough clarity to grit his teeth and endure. Steam poured off the tub as the liquid evaporated rapidly, and Adam's body began undergoing a visible transformation. Though he had once been bulky from childhood strength training, his frame now shrank and reshaped itself, his bones strengthening while his muscles and tendons became leaner, yet infinitely more powerful. Throughout it all, Burger's quills captured every detail, giving the old gnome valuable insight into human anatomy that he knew would fuel future experiments. After several more minutes, the water in the tub fully evaporated, and the steam finally cleared to reveal Adam stepping out of the tub, transformed. His height had grown slightly, but the real change was his physique no longer bulky, but lean, sculpted, and defined as if crafted by a master artisan. Feeling the surge of raw power now coursing through his body, Adam clenched his fists and grinned, declaring that all the pain had been worth it in the end. Edward stared at Adam in complete disbelief, unable to process how the body-cleansing essence oil had transformed his roommate so drastically, making him taller and leaner. Before Adam could respond to Edward's astonished question, exhaustion from the brutal transformation finally caught up with him, and he collapsed face first, only to be caught mid-fall by the adamantine golem, which gently carried him to a guest room on Burger's orders. Concerned, Edward asked if Adam would be all right, and Burger reassured him it was simple exhaustion, nothing more. The old gnome then handed Edward a metal flask, explaining it was medicine for his mother. Overjoyed and grateful, Edward thanked him sincerely before rushing out of the store, determined to deliver it as quickly as possible. He sprinted through the market, across the glowing lunar bridge, and into the noble district of the North Ward, arriving at a grand mansion where guards respectfully greeted him as young lord. Ignoring the bowing servants, Edward hurried up to his mother's room, where he found her lying in bed, pale and clearly unwell. She weakly acknowledged him, and a maid helped her sit up to drink the potion Edward had brought. It was revealed that Edward's mother had fallen gravely ill shortly after his birth, her condition never diagnosed, despite Burger's efforts, and she had survived all these years only because of her husband's connections and Burger's medicine. This unresolved guilt had led Edward to believe his birth was somehow responsible for her suffering, driving a wedge between him and his father. As Edward broke down crying at her bedside, his mother, Elia, gently comforted him, telling him not to worry since she felt better after the medicine. She asked how he'd come to deliver it himself instead of his father's usual messengers, and Edward explained he'd learned the truth about Burger while visiting the store with his roommate. Elia spoke warmly of Burger's wisdom and the help he'd given her over the years. The two spent time catching up, since this was Edward's first visit home since starting at the academy. He shared stories about his life there and his new friendship with Adam. As the medicine began taking effect and Elia grew drowsy, Edward tenderly said goodnight, kissed her forehead, and promised to return the next day before heading back to his own room. Once alone, Elia could no longer hold back her tears. Quietly, she admitted to herself that she didn't know how much longer she had left to live, wishing only that Edward, Elaine, and Victor could go on to live happy lives after she was gone. She wasn't afraid of death itself, only of the pain her family would endure once she was no longer there. As sleep finally took her, she drifted off, dreaming of a better future she knew, deep down, would never come. 2 days later, Adam woke up in an unfamiliar room to find his clothes fitting oddly small because he'd grown taller. Catching his reflection in a nearby mirror, he was stunned by what he saw. His height had increased, his body had become lean and muscular, and his skin looked remarkably smooth and healthy. His jawline and cheekbones were more defined, and while the transformation hadn't made him strikingly handsome, he now looked distinctly more pleasant than before. Admiring the changes, he lamented that the body-cleansing essence oil could only ever be used once. Heading downstairs, Adam found Burger at his usual spot, reading. The old gnome asked how he felt, and Adam enthusiastically confirmed the transformation had worked wonders. Burger noted that the water solution Adam had devised boosted the essence oil's effects by more than 30%, which explained the dramatic results. When Adam cheekily asked for a discount, Burger scoffed at his cheapness, then admitted that observing the entire remodeling process had been genuinely valuable to him. Still, true to his principles, he refused to give anything away for free, offering instead to sell all the equipment and ingredients for 350 gold pieces after a 100 gold discount. Given his limited funds, Adam hesitated, but Burger revealed he intended to honor his belief in fair and equal exchange. Impressed by how ordinary ingredients had unlocked new possibilities in his own herbalism understanding, Burger pulled out an ancient tome and offered it to Adam, explaining it contained knowledge about the spirit world, something he'd recovered from ruins during his younger adventuring days. However, reading it required knowledge of a secret language used by Magi, a detail Burger refused to elaborate on, smacking Adam for asking too many questions and telling him to consult his professors instead. Burger then extracted a glowing white thread from his own forehead and flicked it toward Adam, who instinctively recoiled before the thread burrowed into his mind, flooding him with knowledge. To his astonishment, it turned out to be a rank 1 illusion spell, gifted based on Burger's assessment that Adam possessed unusually strong spiritual power suited for the school of illusion. Choosing not to press further questions, Adam gratefully accepted the transaction, handing over nearly all his remaining money in exchange for the tome, spell knowledge, and materials, feeling the trade was more than worth it. As he prepared to leave, Adam asked if Burger would be open to trading arcane knowledge in exchange for herbalism knowledge in the future. Intrigued by what Adam's mysterious teacher might have taught him, Burger agreed, reaffirming that any exchange would remain fair and equivalent based on the quality of information shared. Thrilled at the prospect of trading his absorbed herbalism knowledge for genuine arcane teachings, Adam thanked Burger warmly and left the shop with his new tome, ingredients, and equipment in hand, eager to return to his dorm and finally begin brewing his own potions. Class began with an old, kindly professor asking the students to name the schools of magic. Lisa DeClaire, the entrance exam's second-place finisher, answered confidently, listing all 8: warding, summoning, divination, enchantment, invocation, illusion, alteration, and necromancy. The professor praised her enthusiastically, much to Edward's quiet irritation as he grumbled about her constantly answering everything, all while secretly snacking on a sweet bun. The professor explained that these schools of magic, developed over hundreds of thousands of years, served as the categories under which all spells were organized. He began detailing 4 of them. The School of Warding covered protective and defensive magic, with its highest practitioners capable of banishing targets to another dimension, entirely a revelation that stunned the class and immediately reminded Adam of the mysterious spirit world he'd glimpsed earlier. Next was the School of Summoning, which handled summoning creatures, objects, and effects, and at its highest level, enabled teleportation itself, allowing Magi to manipulate space. This left Adam pondering whether the terrifying spells he'd once witnessed a black-armored Magus use, freezing space and disintegrating enemies, had come from this school or something else entirely. The professor moved on to the School of Divination, describing it as the most mysterious, allowing Magi to glimpse the future and uncover hidden knowledge, though he clarified that accurate divination still required relevant information to work from. Finally, he introduced the School of Enchantment, which focused on manipulating minds, emotions, and thoughts, along with curses and hexes, requiring sharp observational skill from its practitioners. Running low on time, the professor assigned the remaining 4 schools as homework, promising to quiz the class next lesson. He also announced that the following class would cover how to construct spell models, finally teaching them the components needed to actually cast spells. With that, class was dismissed. As students filed out, Edward complained about the upcoming combat training entertaining and suggested skipping it to sneak off to a great restaurant he knew, tempting Adam further by mentioning its excellent wine. Adam immediately agreed, and the two happily made their way toward the exit, already daydreaming about food and drink. Before they could leave, however, Lisa DeClaire stepped directly into their path. Edward, annoyed, snapped at her, but she ignored him entirely, locking eyes with Adam instead. With unwavering determination, she declared her challenge. Adam Constantine, I challenge you to a duel. Caught completely off guard, Adam wondered if he'd somehow offended Lisa. Edward immediately jumped to his defense, mocking her as a nerd, only for Lisa to snap back by calling him fatty, a jab that oddly stung far more coming from her than it ever did from Adam, leaving Edward fuming. Trying to calm his friend, Adam asked Lisa directly why she wanted to fight him, genuinely puzzled since he sensed no real hostility from her. Lisa explained flatly that fighting in an illusion was nothing like fighting in reality, and she refused to accept that she could actually lose to him in a real one-on-one match. Realizing she simply couldn't stomach losing her pride after the entrance exam, Adam lost interest entirely and flatly refused her challenge, walking away with Edward in tow. The reaction was immediate and intense. Refusing a duel was practically unthinkable among Magi, who valued their reputation as fierce warriors as much as scholars. The onlooking students were stunned, and Lisa angrily accused Adam of cowardice. Unbothered, Adam mockingly agreed that yes, he was a coward, and continued walking away, dragging an embarrassed Edward with him. Lisa chased after them and blocked their path again, this time offering a wager of 50 gold pieces on the fight's outcome. The moment money entered the conversation, Adam's attitude flipped instantly. He eagerly accepted, practically laughing with excitement, since he was in genuine need of funds after spending nearly everything on Burger's ingredients and equipment. He casually told her to wait 10 days before walking off, leaving Lisa flustered and unable to respond right away. She quickly recovered and declared the duel would take place at the Academy's arena in 10 days, then stormed off without waiting for his reply. News of the confrontation spread like wildfire through the first-year students. Many mocked Adam as a coward for initially declining, framing him as a peasant who only agreed once money was involved, while Lisa's many admirers rallied around her, hyped by the idea of watching their popular A-grade classmate face off against the batch's top-ranked student. That evening, Adam and Edward sat drinking rice wine at a restaurant in South Ward. Edward voiced his concern, pointing out that Lisa's A-grade aptitude gave her far greater mana reserves and faster mana replenishment, both major advantages in combat. Adam acknowledged the point, but argued that mana alone didn't decide a fight's outcome. When Edward pressed him on his confidence, Adam grinned and admitted he was sure of victory, bolstered by the 2 rank 1 spells already in his possession, with plans to soon master spell model construction. But beyond that, he also had one more hidden advantage waiting in reserve, something drawn from the power of the White Lotus. The next day, once classes ended, Adam and Edward returned to their dorm, where Edward promptly collapsed onto his bed for a nap, while Adam got straight to work brewing potions. Standing over his cauldron, he carefully followed the herbalism knowledge absorbed from the expert's memory, timing each step precisely as he worked with a bubbling red liquid. While waiting for the mixture to simmer, Adam reviewed his notes from class on the remaining schools of magic. He read about the School of Invocation, which focused on manipulating magical energy for devastating effects, and was the source of his Eldritch Beam spell. He also studied the School of Illusion, which manipulated perception and senses, the same school as the spell Burger had gifted him, along with the School of Alteration, which transformed the properties of objects and creatures, and the School of Necromancy, which dealt with life, death, and spirits, occupied by practitioners who could either bring peace to the dead or wreak chaos, depending on their intent. Turning back to his brewing, Adam crushed violet leaves and earthen roots into a fine paste and added it to the cauldron at the precise moment, infusing the mixture with a thread of his own mana. But the liquid turned dark and murky, instead of taking on the desired effect his 7th failed attempt at brewing a healing potion. Undeterred, despite his disappointment, he reminded himself that even with absorbed expert knowledge, success still required real effort, and he began again. Hours passed as the twin moons rose and Edward slept soundly, snoring through it all. By his 11th attempt, Adam had grown calmer and more focused with each failure, treating every mistake as proof of progress rather than a setback. This time, as he infused mana into the mixture, the liquid shimmered brilliantly, glowing red with hints of green, a clear sign of success. Elated, he burst into laughter, having finally brewed a genuine healing potion after more than 6 hours of trial and error. He carefully bottled the potion into 6 crystal vials, calculating that at a market price of roughly 50 gold pieces each, he'd nearly recovered his initial investment in ingredients and equipment. Pleased with himself, he wondered whether Burger might be willing to buy them. After storing the vials safely in his trunk, Adam went to wake Edward for dinner, kicking him awake. Edward grumbled about being disturbed and claimed he was on a diet, rolling over to go back to sleep. But the moment Adam mentioned heading to Sherman's Inn for a 12-course meal, Edward's resolve crumbled instantly, and he leapt out of bed to chase after his roommate, diet forgotten entirely. After their heavy dinner, Adam spent the rest of the night brewing potions, successfully producing 4 more healing potions after another round of trial and error. The process consumed him so completely that he lost all track of time, leaving him exhausted and unable to stay awake in class the next day. While Adam slept soundly with his head on the table, Edward mischievously painted his face like a circus clown. Meanwhile, the fiery-haired Professor Jock lectured the class on the 3 components required for spellcasting, explaining that different spells required different combinations of these elements. Spotting Adam asleep and already holding a grudge from their first-day tardiness, the professor stormed over and shouted his name, demanding he answer a question. Startled awake, Adam leapt up in a defensive stance, only for the entire class to erupt in laughter at the sight of his painted clown face. Mortified, Adam tried to explain himself, but Professor Jock, notorious for his short temper, exploded and ordered him to stand at the front of the class, holding his ears. Edward, caught laughing at his own handiwork, was smacked and sent to join him. Once order was restored, Professor Jock resumed the lecture, and as always, Lisa eagerly answered first, explaining the 3 spell components in full. The model component, which required constructing a spell model using spiritual power and injecting it with mana. The physical component, involving precise hand or finger motions, and the material component, which required sacrificing a physical material to power the spell. The professor praised her thorough answer, while Lisa shot Adam a smug glance afterward, further irritating him. As the lecture continued, Adam privately reflected on how expensive learning magic truly was, especially given the cost of material components. Understanding now why the path of a Magus was largely reserved for the wealthy, he felt fortunate that the knowledge he'd absorbed from the White Lotus gave him an edge he otherwise never would have had. A curious student then asked about magic combat techniques mentioned earlier, and Professor Jock briefly explained that this was typically taught starting in the 3rd year, describing it as the fusion of physical combat and magic, where Magi imbue their weapons with mana to unleash powerful techniques. When class ended for the day, Adam planned to head to Burger's store to sell his 10 healing potions, but not before dealing with Edward. Confronting his roommate over the clown makeup, Adam was met with more mocking laughter, which only provoked him further. He pounced on Edward and delivered a thorough beating right there in the classroom, drawing a crowd of amused classmates who cheered and placed bets on the spectacle. Lisa, walking past the chaos, simply shook her head in disapproval, muttering about how such behavior tarnished the dignity of Magi everywhere. Still wearing his ruined clown makeup, Adam made his way through the bustling, multicultural streets of South Ward, home to a diverse mix of humans, elves, dwarves, and gnomes living together in harmony, a city rumored to have been modeled after the long-lost elven city of Fapor. Despite his best efforts, nothing could scrub the paint from his face, drawing bewildered stares from passers-by who had never seen a Clover Academy student looking like a street performer. Adam simply gave up trying to fix it, choosing not to dwell on things outside his control. Arriving at Herbs and More, Adam's clown face immediately caught the attention of the customers inside. Before he could react, Blackie came bounding out from behind the counter, delighted to see him. Adam happily crouched down to greet the puppy, but Blackie darted away, leading him on a playful chase, before suddenly turning around and urinating on his foot, then bolting to hide behind Burger. Furious, Adam chased after him through the store, to the horror of the customers, who couldn't believe anyone would dare provoke Burger's familiar. Amused by the chaos, Burger simply dismissed the other customers from his shop, and they scrambled out without hesitation, unwilling to defy a powerful Magus. Once the store cleared out, Burger told Adam to give up chasing the dog, as he'd never catch him. Defeated, Adam vowed revenge on Blackie, who merely smirked and curled up smugly in Burger's lap for head scratches. Burger then asked what Adam had come for, and Adam presented his wooden box of healing potions, only to get smacked on the forehead for not opening it himself. When Adam finally revealed the vials. Burger was initially unimpressed until he noticed the potions had an unusual reddish liquid with green tints, distinct from a standard healing potion. Intrigued, he uncorked one and took a whiff, immediately recognizing it as an entirely new recipe. Excited, he asked how much Adam wanted for the formula, but Adam smugly refused to sell it outright, though he teasingly suggested he might give it away for free instead. Caught off guard by being refused for what seemed like the first time in a long while, Burger smirked, recognizing the tables had turned, and asked what Adam wanted in exchange. With his clown-painted face twisting into a mischievous grin, Adam began to state his price. Burger burst into laughter the moment Adam named his price, immediately agreeing to the deal only for Adam's stomach to drop as both Burger and Blackie mocked him. It turned out Adam had massively undervalued his own recipe, trading it for a mere rank 1 spell, which Burger explained was worth far less than an unknown potion formula. A rank 1 spell typically sold for around 10 platinum pieces, while an original recipe was worth many times more. Adam desperately tried to renegotiate, only to get smacked with Burger's pipe each time, the old gnome insisting that mistakes needed consequences to actually teach a lesson. With the trade finalized, Burger received the new healing potion recipe, while Adam received the rank 1 spell, Hide, an illusion school spell that rendered a single target invisible to one observer for 3 minutes, requiring only the model and physical components with no material cost. As Burger studied the recipe with obvious delight, praising its clever use of common ingredients, Adam privately wondered whether the gnome would still be impressed if he knew about some of the far darker herbalism knowledge buried in his absorbed memories. Shaking off that thought, Adam asked if Burger would buy his 10 healing potions. After carefully inspecting each vial, Burger asked, somewhat suspicious, if this was truly Adam's first time brewing. Adam confirmed it was, admitting his success rate was under 40% and offering to demonstrate on the spot if given free ingredients. Impressed despite himself by such a success rate for a total beginner, Burger agreed to buy all 10 potions at market price, 5 platinum coins each, sealing the deal immediately. Adam was thrilled, having already earned back more money than he'd ever held before, more than covering his earlier investment. Emboldened, Adam then asked to buy horned black sheep's fleece, the material component needed for another spell he'd received earlier, the Dinky Illusion. Burger quoted 5 gold pieces per 10 grams, prompting Adam to try haggling again, earning another smack from the pipe for his trouble. Grudgingly, he paid 5 platinum pieces for 100 grams, watching as Burger magically extracted the exact amount using a floating jar and delivered it into a paper bag. Realizing just how costly the path of a Magus truly was, Adam resolved to keep brewing potions to sustain his growing expenses, thanked Burger, and hurried back to his dorm. After Adam left, Blackie mentally communicated something to Burger, who smiled knowingly and stroked the puppy's ears in response. Both of them had already sensed something unusual about Adam. Not just the unusual purity of his soul, which occasionally appeared in gifted Magi, but his rare and inexplicable affinity with creatures from the spirit world. Blackie, who normally reacted to strangers with hostility or indifference, seemed completely at ease around Adam. Intrigued, Burger mused quietly to himself, wondering just what path this strange gifted boy would ultimately choose to walk. A crowd of curious first-year students gathered outside dorm 52A, drawn by the sounds of crashing, yelling, and cursing coming from within. Speculating wildly about what chaos Adam and Edward had caused this time, the students got their answer when the door burst open and Edward came charging out, crashing straight into several bystanders. He immediately doubled over laughing, only to get smacked in the face by a flying shoe which somehow didn't stop his laughter as he taunted Adam and fled the scene. Moments later, an enraged Adam stormed out, demanding to know what Edward had done to his face, only for the gathered students to burst into laughter themselves, revealing that his clown makeup was still very much intact. Humiliated, Adam retreated back into his room and desperately tried scrubbing his face clean in the bathroom mirror, but nothing worked. It had already been 2 days since Edward painted him, and the paint refused to budge, seemingly some kind of stubborn magical dye. Giving up for the time being, Adam gathered some supplies and headed to the north end of campus, ignoring the stares his clown face drew along the way. He made his way underground to a rental facility where a half-asleep, crooked-nosed old woman nearly mistook him for an actual clown before recognizing his academy uniform. She informed him that renting a training room cost 1 platinum piece per hour. Adam winced at the price and attempted to negotiate a discount, but was met with a deadpan insult, questioning his intelligence, leading to an awkward, silent standoff before he reluctantly paid full price and was directed to room 5. Inside the training room, Adam found the walls made of a dark alloy inscribed with runes he recognized as noise-canceling and energy absorption formations, along with 3 sturdy training dummies at the far end. He had come to finally test his spellcasting abilities. Of the 3 spells in his possession, only one, the rank 1 spell, Eldritch Beam, was actually offensive in nature. The other 2 were purely illusion-based deception spells. Kneeling down, Adam swiftly performed the 11 hand and finger movements required for the spell's physical component, having practiced the motions extensively beforehand. He then grasped his wrist, aimed 2 fingers at the central dummy, and channeled his spiritual power, causing a glowing magic circle to form at his fingertips. With both the physical and model components complete, dark purple energy began gathering and crackling at his fingertips. Overwhelmed with excitement at casting his very first real spell, Adam took a moment to steady himself and focus entirely on the technique. Then, just as the energy reached its peak, Adam's eyes widened in shock and alarm. The spell exploded. The spell erupted from Adam's fingers in an unpredictable crackling zigzag rather than a straight beam, completely missing the training dummy and slamming into the ceiling instead. The recoil sent Adam flying backward, and he looked down in horror to find his hand had gone completely numb. He realized that without the constant mana nourishment his body had undergone during the foundation stages, the spell's backlash could have seriously injured him, a sobering reminder of why the rank 1 mana foundation stages mattered so much. Staring at the glowing purple mark on the ceiling where the runes were absorbing the stray energy, Adam broke into a cold sweat, imagining what would happen if such a spell struck an ordinary person. It would surely tear a bloody hole through them. Awed and unsettled by the sheer destructive power of Eldritch Beam, one of the most fearsome rank 1 attack spells, he reset his stance and prepared to try again, determined to master it before his duel with Lisa. What had begun as a fight motivated purely by money had shifted now that his potion sales were bringing in steady income. Adam genuinely wanted to test himself against a true genius with an A-grade aptitude. With renewed determination, he completed the components again and unleashed another explosive cast. Meanwhile, Lisa was training just as intensely elsewhere on campus. Despite her natural talent, she remained relentlessly hardworking, sparring against a dozen wooden training dummies with both spellcasting and hand-to-hand combat. As the dummies surrounded her, she calmly triggered Shape Earth, a rank 1 alteration spell, causing the ground to ripple and destabilize the dummies' footing. She then moved through them with her staff, destroying several in quick succession with precise, powerful strikes. As the fight continued, Lisa dodged and countered with fluid grace, at one point somersaulting over a lunging dummy and casting Frostbite directly onto its head using nothing but a touch, before smashing it apart mid-air with her staff. The last 2 dummies charged her simultaneously, but she summoned Shape Earth once more, this time manifesting earthen spears from the ground to impale them both, finishing off the encounter in under a minute. Catching her breath and adjusting her glasses, Lisa surveyed the destruction she'd caused, only for the sound of applause to interrupt the silence. A voice praised her performance warmly, calling her "Dear Lisa." Instantly, Lisa's fists clenched, and something like anger and hatred flickered across her face. But the moment she turned to face the speaker, that emotion vanished, replaced by a smile, though clearly a forced one. The voice belonged to Kevin Gracie, a wealthy, refined-looking second-year student and heir to the powerful Gracie family that ruled Faber Province. Standing beside him was Jeffrey, who had apparently wormed his way into Kevin's circle since joining the academy. Lisa approached Kevin with a forced, bright smile, greeting him respectfully as he stepped closer and touched her cheek, remarking on her beauty with unsettling familiarity. Though she trembled with disgust beneath the surface, she masked it perfectly, replying with practiced grace. Kevin's gaze lingered over her possessively as he declared she was the only one worthy of becoming his wife, referencing that night in a way that visibly shook her. He tightened his grip on her face and whispered that he'd be watching her upcoming duel against that farm boy, expecting a good show. Jeffrey cruelly added that she should try to cripple Adam if she could. Lisa said nothing, standing frozen, and the 2 boys left with cold laughter, indifferent to her silence. Once alone, Lisa collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably as she pounded the ground in anguish, repeatedly screaming, "Why?" The truth behind her forced engagement was revealed years earlier. The Gracie family had slaughtered her father during a resource dispute, and only her agreement to marry Kevin had spared the rest of her family. Even now, the Gracie family kept her her relatives under constant surveillance, threatening her younger brother, Jamie, to ensure the DeClaire family stayed obedient. Thinking of him intensified her grief, but eventually she wiped her tears and resolved to grow stronger so she'd never again have to bow her head. She held no illusions about avenging her father against a rank 2 Magus. As powerful as the Gracie family head, her only real goal was protecting what remained of her family, while quietly yearning for freedom and strength. This drive was also why she'd challenged Adam, hoping the duel would push her further. Composing herself, Lisa left the training facility and headed back toward her dorm, only to spot a bizarre sight in the distance: a clown-faced boy chasing a boar-like figure across the campus grounds. Realizing it was Adam still chasing Edward, she marched over and intercepted them, forcing herself into a stern pose to hide her amusement at his ridiculous painted face. She warned him not to disappoint her in their upcoming duel before quickly turning and walking away before her composure could break. Watching her leave, Adam quietly noted that despite her calm exterior, his heightened perception told him she was deeply troubled. Before he could dwell on it further, Edward kicked him from behind, sending him sprawling, and took off running while taunting him. Adam scrambled up and resumed the chase, the two continuing their game of cat and mouse across campus. From beneath a tree in the distance, Lisa watched the two friends play, a bitter smile crossing her face as she clutched her hands to her chest and murmured wistfully how much she wished she could be as carefree and happy as they were. That's all for this video. We'll be back again with another one soon, so drop a like and do subscribe if you enjoyed it and want more of the same.